trashed with the web screen nickers. A cheap night cause I'm feeling kinda thrifty. Got a 10-pack of beers and a bottle of whiskey. Hop up the cork, have a glass of wine. Pass fail safe, I'll be fine. Trouble walking in a straight line, but pour me a Pinot Noir. It's open bar with our hosts, MauLer and the Critical Drinker.
Oh, hey, you wonderful people. Welcome this evening.
God. We're back.
Fancy meeting you here. We're back, yes, after a week's absence. The bar is open once more. So
last week it was just me outside the doors. Be like, hey.
Where is everyone?
We're closed.
I'm sobering up. Help me. No, it's good to be back. Yeah, it's weird how you get completely out of practice with this stuff. So, hey, give me a break if I totally screw this up in the course of the stream. I'll do my best to remember how we do this.
No problem.
It is good to be here. It's good to be back with you, MauLer. I've missed your silky voice. God damn it. And it's good to be with you guys in chat. Hello to everybody. Welcome back. And it's, we've hopefully got a nice, interesting show lined up for you this evening. We've got a whole bunch of things going on. Doctor Who is back. Sort of, I guess.
We got the weekly box office watch of the Marvels.
We should check that as well, yeah. Disney's financials have come out. They're as good as you would expect. And, Elon Musk seems to have declared war on basically everyone who's trying to blackmail Twitter. So, wow. Quite an interesting week. But anyway, we should probably bring in our guests so we can talk about this properly. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. We have got, first of all, making his return to the open bar for the first time in a couple of months. He is the Despot of Antrim. Welcome back, my friends.
Thanks very much for having me on, Drinker and MauLer.
Hello.
Hello. I was just watching your review of the Marvels, proper long-form epic review, and it's excellent, man. It's really good stuff. You really broke down. You broke down a lot of the problems with that movie, like in way more depth than I could ever bear to go into. So well done for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I had to get into that because turns out that it's not just because it has women in it. There's things like bad character arcs, or the complete absence of character arcs, and lack of believability, and lots of other stuff.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. So is that a multi-part thing that you're doing with this?
No, that was just. I mean, to be honest. Like, that was almost an hour and a half long, but I kind of had to. I could have gone on and on and on about it. There was a lot of stuff I was seeing in other videos that I didn't cover, and I thought, man, I can cover some of it, but I couldn't. I couldn't do like a MauLer length video, like 4 or 5 hours. That's just. I just don't have the capacity for that kind of suffering.
It does take a while.
Yeah, you got to build up to it. But
so you feeling though when you get a 6-month long video completed, you're like, yay, for a day, and then you're back to it.
Then you start getting the comments saying, "So when's TFA Part 5?" No, it's good stuff, man. And good to have you back on the bar. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have got, he's been on this bar so many times, I don't even know when the last time was. It's so regular. But he's a seasoned drinker, and he is the little Platoon. Welcome back, my friends.
Thank you for having me. The lawsuit for liver damage is on the way, but I did technically do that to myself, so maybe we can let you off.
The drinker will accept no liabilities for alcohol-induced liver failure that occur as a result of these live streams.
If you do find him in any way, he will pay you in alcohol. So
I'm not giving up any of my alcohol for this. Never.
As if you don't have infinite supplies.
I've just got this enormous basement that stretches off into infinity. It's like the Indiana Jones warehouse, but filled with like whiskey casks.
I'm now kind of imagining you in the Matrix, but when they go to the construct, it's just this huge white room, and then this rack of whiskey just emerges from the background. Infinite whiskey.
Yeah, we're gonna need drink, lots of drink. Yeah. But yeah, we've also got Disparu joining us this evening, but he's doing all that geeky stuff with Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, what can we say? We've got to let him get on with it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But he will probably show up when he is goddamn good and ready. But how about we just kick things off with a nice little interlude of Doctor Who. It's been a long time since we've talked about that on the bar, but it's back after a very long absence. Everyone was kind of optimistic, actually, about the future of it. Well, cautiously optimistic after Jodie Whittaker's exit. You know, the 13th Doctor, who was nobody's favorite, was gone. Chris Chibnall was gone. Russell T Davies was back. You know, we had David Tennant coming back as well for a limited run as the Doctor, and everyone thought maybe this is the BBC turning things around. And then we saw it. And things might be slightly different now. So, yeah, I guess, like, how did you guys find this? Was it the Star Beast? How was it for you?
Just completely disappointing because it confirmed all the concerns I could possibly have had about going into this thing. I was like, at least I said to Garen, real BBC, at least I'll have good dialogue back, right? Even if it's crappy plot lines, even if there's weird, statements about the state of the universe, at least I'll have characters with witty dialogue, at least a little bit. But no, nothing.
And then you
There's
got
nothing really.
the male presenting Time Lord diatribe. You thought, clearly we're not going to get good dialogue with this one then.
No, not even a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it was pretty poorly written, regardless of all the fucking weird social messaging that Russell decided to put in there. Which, by the way, I don't know if you guys have caught it, but seems to have had the complete opposite effect that he would have wanted. I've seen either people sharing the clips for cringe or people sharing them to say this is like gross and doesn't represent me, a trans person, or me as a woman is kind of grossed out by like these ideas in the episode. Because yeah, if anything, it feels like a fucking clunky teenager trying to, like, I don't know, pander, not the work of a very experienced writer who knows what he's doing.
I honestly didn't expect them to go in this hard with all that social messaging, because if nothing else, well, I thought the one thing they would take away from Doctor 13 was, like, okay, people have criticized this for being really heavy-handed with the political messaging and the social pandering. Maybe we ought to back off with that stuff, at least for the David Tennant run. Just, reestablish the brand as a fun sci-fi adventure story again. Let's just do that, and then we can get back to the message. But no, wow, they really went in guns blazing with this episode. I was surprised by how hard they went in with it.
Well, they're not in the private space. They're not like Disney, whereby they have to worry. If we keep pushing the message too hard, what's going to happen is we'll get things like Wish, our new supposed to be classic animation, back to the good old days, bring back the magic, and it just flops.
Isn't Disney
BBC don't have to
partially
worry about
funding
that.
this, though? I thought that one of the things about this new run of Doctor Who is that it has extra financial backing, in part because it has Disney bankrolling it behind the scenes.
I think they act as the American distributor for it as well, do they not?
Yeah. And you're completely right on the BBC side of things. Obviously, we don't have a choice not to pay for that. Well, except for not having a television, which I'm quite happy to do. But nevertheless, it's not completely immune from corporate backing. But it's just telling that it's Disney which is providing extra support to this one, and this is pretty much exactly what you'd expect of anything that Disney is now providing financial support for. I was kind of curious. I haven't watched Doctor Who, I don't think, since Russell T Davies's first run at Doctor Who. I vaguely remember it being kind of fun. Like, stories were okay, characters were there. As MauLer said, dialogue was pretty, like, it was competent, at very least competent. Didn't mind it at all. And David Tennant was back, and I remembered him being good. So I thought, I'm going to go and give this a go. Maybe this one will be the thing that gets me back into Doctor Who, and sort of just sat there progressively more open-mouthed as the thing went on. So reverse Grogu, that's cute, but it's kind of Doctor Who-ish. But then about 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, it's worse, and then 15 minutes in, it's worse again. And then the big finale at the end, when it turns out the whole thing is just, there isn't a story there is just an allegory. And that the bad writing is entirely linked to the fact that the entire episode is an allegory. There isn't a story that they're even trying to tell with that one. It is all to push the political point.
Yeah. And it's done in such a smug way as well. Like, I think there's perhaps ways to tackle this, and the episode seemed to get off to a reasonably good start with it when you're first introduced to Rose, and she's walking down the street with her mom, and the kids go by, like, calling her by her original name, like Jason, like, and you kind of see the reaction. It's like, okay, this is handling it okay, I guess. This is the sort of thing they have to deal with. but it's just like the payoff to all of this is so over the top, like preachy and smug and just unnecessary. I think, like you say, it has the opposite effect of what they intended. It just comes across as just the metropolitan London liberal like view of all of this stuff. Like, I have to step in and protect these people because it's my duty. And it just comes across as just intolerably smug and condescending.
Yeah, like at some point since the mid 2000s, Russell T Davies has decided that he's the white knight that the trans community really needs. And if he is your most fervent, because he could have been a really great ally to any marginalized community because he can tell stories. There's no more important ally than a storyteller. And I thought, as you say, you point out that when Rose is first introduced and you get the very personal side of her background, which is interesting, and I think that's quite well done by comparison, because if you're going to be telling stories which are in any way predicated on somebody's innate characteristics, then making that a personal drama is absolutely the thing you need to do. What you don't do is make the entire world an allegory for that experience, because then you've stopped actually exploiting what is profitable about having any kind of marginalized person in your show. You're losing the unique perspective and the unique trials and tribulations they have to go for in favor of just this blanket, oh yeah, male presenting people are evil, stupid, bad people, and they can't possibly understand. Even though there's no difference between men and women, male presenting people don't understand that point, apparently.
Of course, yeah. I think that finale was like every social justice warrior's wet dream. If I had to sum it all up, you have got two women, one of which is a interracial trans woman lecturing a man about how he doesn't understand anything, and how like only they have the ability to let go of this power. And also, incidentally, and I'll get into this shortly, undoing a key aspect of one of their characters' resolutions from previous episodes, while a wheelchair-bound woman of power looks on and gets showered with cosmic space cum. It's I just can't.
There was the woman in the wheelchair.
I fucking can't sum all of this up in language that like makes sense.
My favorite part was when the woman in the wheelchair turned to the doctor and the rest of them and said, "You lot run, I'll fight them off at the lift." And this is a woman in a wheelchair saying this, and that was my personal favorite part. But yeah, the end where they're lecturing the doctor, and just the other parts as well, like where the trans kid is getting really nasty and saying, "Did you just assume that creature's pronouns?"
Oh yeah.
And of course, the doctor's immediately very apologetic and says, "Oh, you're right. I shouldn't have done that." And like you were saying earlier about how it's not a good presentation of anyone really, but the idea that trans people are extremely prickly and are very quick to take offense and to lecture people, it just makes it. If you were trans, I could see you being offended by this because it just makes them look like a pack of soft, easily offended, irritating idiots, really.
So I think as well, like if I was in that situation where I've got an alien life form in my living room and I'm trying to communicate with it, and like the first thing that one of my comrades says to me is, "Yeah, did you just assume it's gender?" I think my response would be, "Fuck off. I've got more important things to deal with and worry about right now than that. This is a fucking alien that I need to understand if it's a threat, if it's going to end the world, what it wants. That's more important than all of this crap." It's just so contrived. It's ridiculous.
I was trying to think of what I would do had I come across the meep and it spoke to me in a voice that I couldn't quite tell was male or female. What would I do for pronouns? And I was like, I probably would just be like, if I need to refer to go like, so what are you, are you a guy or a girl? Like I probably like, and if they threw that in, if they had the doctor just be like, are you and then it says like, I am the meep, and he'd be like, okay. Like if I feel like that's about the level you need to go. In the same vein, I didn't mind the kitchen scene with I guess the grandmother is asking, is it okay to say certain things or whatever? Just the normal confusion a lot of people have. But then it doesn't make sense because you see stuff like that and you're just like, yeah, I see what Russell's trying to do, and I can see it making some level of sense. But then because you were saying that it would annoy surely some trans people, right? And I got to do my best to explain this, but do you guys know what it means to be gender essentialist?
No.
It means that like there are certain you are saying there's certain traits that come with being male versus female, and a lot of sort of trans activists or feminists don't like, or maybe feminists would like it. I don't know, but I saw the part where he says like as a male presenting doctor you wouldn't understand. That actually pissed off a lot of trans people, because if it, again, try and follow me on this. If you present as male, that means you wouldn't understand a female issue is offensive to a trans person. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, because it contains the sort of the seeds of its own contradiction. They had to throw in the line male presenting in order to try to avoid the gender essentialist connotations, which is that the Doctor is in fact a male, therefore has a perspective. But they still managed to bring it in by saying that, yeah, even though you're only presenting as something which is no different than anything else you might be choosing to present as, except superficially, you are essentially incapable of grasping the point of somebody who presents in a way other than you do, which is insane.
All of this has to work around the fact that he was literally just a female. Like, it doesn't perspective with him. So it's like you can't have both aspects.
I think it's a triple failure, right? It doesn't work in universe because that actually doesn't make sense. He has more familiarity with being a woman than any normal man would, because he was just a woman by the a lot of. Doesn't work for the average viewer because they're just like, what the fuck did you just say? And why? Why did you just tell me that men are like worse than women? Like they just established that as canon. And then, like I said, it's backfiring on a lot of people it was pandering to. And like I haven't seen writing that impressive in a bad way before. Like it was just like, shit, man, you managed to annoy everybody. Like
if they'd said you don't understand because you're a man, that would have made sense, because it assumes that there are certain male traits that are preventing this person from understanding because it doesn't have a female perspective. But if you say you don't understand because you are male presenting, the problem there is they're suggesting that the innate traits are a result of presenting as male, which is a choice. So it can't be innate if it's a choice.
No, it can't. But it's also, and this goes back to the point that if it failing the people it's supposed to be serving, the fact that this is the subject of the conversation, and it's the thing we've already spent more time on than say that like the plot or any of the characters or whatever that Russell might have said was the artistic part of his propaganda. Is going to be very annoying and probably quite damaging to a lot of the people it's supposed to, serve. I know trans people. I work with trans people. Transgo helps me out on the channel all the time. And I don't know a single trans person outside of the activist set who wants to be the subject of conversation in the way that they are made the subject of conversation when people like Russell T Davies do what they've done. If the whole point is you want to pass as a member of the opposite sex and live your life as normally as possible, which is the basic rights claim that gay people have made throughout history, that lesbians have made throughout history, then having an incompetent propagandist like Russell T Davies ensure that everyone is now talking about the fundamental nonsense behind trans activism is not doing you any psychological good. This is a classic example of a guy who's probably gone away to America where things are much less sensible politically and conversationally, and come back with these very, very, very silly notions that he's now putting onto British TV screens, and that's going to be doing a lot of damage to a lot of people.
Well, and let's not forget the thing that she said or was said about male versus female was that men don't let go of power, but women can. Right? That was like the point that was being made. Men wouldn't understand what they're about to do in relation to the Time Lord stuff's going on in their brains because men wouldn't understand letting go of power. Right?
Mm.
Yes.
That's pretty fucked up. Like as a message to
show me a woman that's ever fucking let go of anything ever. Like,
I'm not even. I'm just going more so the direction of it's really fucked up to say that to that. I was about to say that doctor, but the doctor, a guy who has been through basically everything you could imagine 7 billion times over, sacrificed everything, given up the chance to have like full control and power over all kinds of things throughout the universe of all time. It's like one of the most embarrassing things you could say to somebody like him.
Well, he really doesn't seem like the kind of guy you should be able to lecture. And he doesn't seem like the kind of person who should take it.
No.
He indulges humans for all our foibles and so on. And like occasionally, like with our simple brains, that like we can teach him basic moral lessons, but you can't sit in a position of intellectual authority over the Doctor. And that's what they're trying to do here. And it's like, motherfucker, you've had like the briefest taste of what it is to be a Time Lord for like literally seconds, and you think you're in a position to dictate to the Doctor how this stuff works and what it means to have power and how you understand the nature of the universe, you don't understand jack shit. It would be like if I read one page of a car manual and then marched into my nearest garage and told all the guys, fuck off, I know everything and you know nothing. That is not how it works. It's just, again, it's like this idea of like, they had the vision of, we want to have these two women lecture the Doctor and put him in his place a little bit because he's a man and they're women, and that's great optics. They never stopped to consider for 1 second what the actual context of it was and whether it actually makes sense in universe. Because who cares? It's all about just getting that point across. That's all
it
that
doesn't
matters.
even make sense within the context of the episode contradicts itself, because when they're on the Meep spaceship trying to sabotage it, the woman turns around to the Doctor and says, I gave away £100 million because I internalized your mind. And because I was just like you, I gave away this money. And then literally 10 minutes later, she says, you can't let go of power because you're a man. You've just admitted that this man would give away £100 million. Like, that is as powerful as it gets. Like, you have the financial power to influence people's lives massively, since that's what power is. It's the ability to influence lives. You've got £100 million, you give it away. You're not a power-hungry person, right? You're the complete opposite. And then 10 minutes later, she tells me you can't let go of power. It's just even awful writing.
It's even worse than that, because in previous episodes, and I forget which episode the name is, but the Doctor has already been through this, where there's been a species on Earth which actually replicated humans, looked just like humans, and we had a scale model of war, which came down to, would you press a button or not? So we've been through this exact situation of, if you press this button, half of every single person on the planet will die. And it was literally during the last Doctor's run, we're doing the entire same thing all over again. But this time we're supposed to think, oh, it's brand new because this time Meep did it. And like, maybe it's me. I am firmly in the Meep did nothing wrong kind of camp in this entire thing. Meep landed. He cut his hand. He was confronted by somebody who had bits cut off them. Then the next thing, he's he tries to make friends with the family. They're like, we will sell you into slavery if you don't do any of this. Every single time Meep met a human person on this planet, they wanted to do something horrible to him. And in the end, he was just like, I will destroy all of London. I'm like, okay, I've barely been into London. I still agree with you. So, you know, I am firmly in the, I fully support Meep during all of this.
But there is that look on the Doctor's
I live in
face.
London, I agree.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like Meep was horrifically treated during this entire episode. If you just put yourself in Meep's position, be like, okay, I just want to leave. I don't care what happens to any of you. I just want to leave.
Also, hi, Disparu.
Hi, Disparu. Welcome aboard.
I am more than willing to take on the
stumbles into the bar ranting.
When someone comes halfway through a rant, like, we can't really introduce them. We just have to dump them into the conversation, hope for the best.
I am more than willing to take on the pro Meep scenario during this entire debate if need be. It's like,
I think the Doctor was as well, because the look on his face when he was being lectured to by the women, if you just slowly pan in on him looking absolutely like maybe that weird genocidal alien might have had a point.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Was it genocidal, or was it just taking out 5 miles of London?
That would sort of be doing. Is that doing England a favor, just getting rid of London? Would that not immeasurably improve the political condition of the country?
100%, yes.
There's something else to sort of go with as well, right? Like a lot of people here, I don't know if how into Doctor Who everyone is, but I assume everybody at least saw some or all of Tennant's first run.
Yeah.
A lot of it has some of the best episodes, or at least some of the most fan favorites. It's good stuff. There's the Doctor and Donna's relationship. A lot of people praise that as being one of the better ones compared to Rose or Martha, mainly because she was much more challenging of him, and a lot of the worst traits that he had, his flaws as a character in that sort of run was brought out and like addressed by her character in some ways and other ways. And, they had a big old series of episodes that culminates with a lot of power entering her head in order to solve like a huge problem. But the reality is it's going to kill her. He has to put up mental blocks that mean he can't see her again. And so, effectively destroying their whole relationship. And you're like, okay, and it's very sad. And oh man, it was Gary's video on this topic that really pissed me off, because he played clips of David Tennant and Catherine Tate talking about that episode back when it was fucking made. They're talking about how that's how the story ends, and that's it, and that It's a sad, it's a bittersweet moment because of what was achieved, but what has to be done, and you can't just have everything the way you want it, and consequences, And so, if you're gonna undo it, you're gonna have to be really fucking careful. This is something we talk about with almost everything. It's like bringing back Palpatine. Could you ever do it in a good way? It's like, you gotta be so fucking careful. It's like 1 in a million to do it in the best way possible. You know what I mean? But like with this, they undo that damage, that potential of killing her, and now her offspring being split with this horrible problem. They can just get rid of it because they're women.
No, it's because they're non-binary, MauLer.
See,
well, no, because Catherine Tate gets rid of it not because she's non-binary, but because she's a woman. Women can
but she passes it on to Rose, who can then handle the meta crisis because she's non-binary.
Yeah, but they both release.
Yeah, but that's just a bloke, right?
Yeah, but I was a bit confused because throughout the episode, the transgender kid insists on being referred to as she, but at the end, says male and female. I'm neither. I'm all. Well, if you're all, then why do you insist on being referred to with female pronouns?
No, but you also have Tennant and Donna referring to themselves as binary when they wouldn't be binary. They'd be one or the other. That's not
with
binary.
the Doctor, he is the definition, or the Doctor is the definition of like non-binary, since he's been both male and females.
Well,
because if the Doctor is binary, then why wouldn't he understand
as one or the other or both? So the Doctor would be all of them.
If the trans character became trans because of the binary fleams from the Time Lord's juice, then why wouldn't the Time Lord himself be understanding of the situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what
None of it makes sense.
The Doctor can be animals. Like according to the
time,
law, the Doctor can be animals, which is what he meant by
20 years with a recording of this conversation and just play it for people and see how they react.
I know, because we are trying to unravel and make sense of something that I think is fundamentally
mechanics now. These are sci-fi mechanics that I can't make any sense of any of it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's all, I guess, it was all sublimated to the message in this episode, and like it almost didn't matter how they got there as long as they could just get that point across. And like you say, MauLer, it undoes one of the most touching and poignant story arcs in the 10th Doctor's run, of having to let go of Donna, like one of his best companions, because if she remembers him, it will kill her. And they do all of this. They bring her back, and they undo this whole thing just by almost flipping a switch. She dies, then she comes back, and then she's fine because she's passed on the power to her offspring.
That was also really lame, by the way that they just sort of we were doing clown stuff, and then suddenly they were like, "Oh, Donna's going to have to die in order for us to stop the ship." And then David Tennant just switches on like hyper acting, not bad acting, just acting that was just like, "Fuck, I guess we're doing this now." Jeez.
I'm not sure I can complain about that because one of my favorite episodes is the library, and so
Silence in the Library.
Yeah, and so you get that same kind of thing in that everyone thinks everyone's died, and then they don't. So.
That's not what I'm talking about. Like I'm talking about the fact that we flip so quickly from doing like
that's the same thing happens in times with the library, right? That everyone is supposed to have died and then suddenly don't.
They set it up in that episode though for a while. Like Catherine Tate is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
stored. Like they're not quite dead, right? All the characters are stored.
Yeah. And they did it with the empty child as well, where like they were able to save everyone. It was like a whole big thing of like, hey, everyone gets to live in this one.
What I mean is, I'm not against like, everyone's going to die, and then at the last second, everyone gets saved.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. It's a question of tone, though. So it's how quickly do you flip from like completely dire, everyone's going to die, to all of a sudden, no, we've moved on completely, and it's all triumphant, and we're talking about something else entirely. There's another scene earlier on when is it Bernard Cribbins' character in the Doctor thinks that he's dead?
I
just like why turn that into a man?
That was bad.
No, he's not dead.
That
We just stuck him in a home. That's so much better.
Look,
it's like just have a fucking sincere moment that doesn't revolve around fucking Rose. Just it was the episode.
It was really well done. How Tennant played that entire segment was really well done. It made you feel like this guy obviously likes him a lot. He even said it in the actual episode, it was really emotional, it was impactful, and the next thing you've just got two women playing out like comedy moments out of it. This guy died in real life. Like,
this is like
that fucking joke.
This is the Disney. This is the fucking Disney influence right there. This is like straight out of a Marvel movie.
Yeah,
that kind of ridiculous.
Seriously, how do you keep a joke like that in there when the actor did actually die? Like after they would have made that in continuity. Like why would you want to? It's so like rude. The fact that, and who does that when you're like, oh, where's your dad? And you go, he's not with us. And you go, oh shit. And then they go, no, I didn't mean he's dead. I clearly meant he's not in the house with us right now. It's like, what kind of shit joke is that? And then you have the other girl being like, oh yeah, you idiot. It's just like, man.
Yeah.
I just felt fucking bitter.
So now that's your position as like actors that know what's going on. Now imagine yourself from that's kind of like that's from the scene, right? Now imagine you're an actor that knows exactly what has gone on, and you're the person that's supposed to be saying that in real life. Like somebody else is trying to do this really genuine scene because they've acted with this person for a while from like 10 years ago, and you're this brand new character that's coming out of nowhere, and you're also supposed to be shitting on his grave. That is an entirely different level.
I've got a question for everyone as well here. So I know a young wheelchair-bound special needs girl who would dress her scooter as a half Dalek so that she could play Davros at cons. Now what is she going to do? Yeah, because we don't want to have wheelchair users like associated with evil.
But she can dress up as that incredibly important, influential character whose name I don't know, who has the James Bond wheelchair that fires rockets and stuff.
I tell you though, that Children in Need special, that whole philosophy behind that pissed me off so much. I made an entire video about it, just ranting about it, because it's so just like the trans allegory in this, like where Russell just takes it upon himself to be the white knight that's going to protect trans people. He took it upon himself to protect disabled people in that special, and achieved completely the opposite result of what he had intended.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, we're not going to associate them with bad people. Nobody ever looked at Davros, this fucking mutated
I do now.
monster that was like crippled and it was in this motorized wheelchair that was clearly like the prototype for the Daleks and how they got around, and thought, oh my god, that's how I see all disabled people now. Nobody thought that because we're not idiots. But that's what he's reduced it to. It's like the simple-minded association of one person is like disabled in some physical way. Therefore, everyone's going to associate that with every other person who's physically disabled. It's absolute bullshit. And it takes away so much from people like that. To basically say, right, well, clearly you guys have got no agency. I have to protect you by myself. Like, you're not capable of achieving anything by yourselves. You're not capable of making your own decisions and being held accountable for your own actions. It's got to be people like me who are going to keep you safe from the world. It's like, oh, fuck off, you self-righteous prick.
And villains are some of the best characters in all of fiction. Everybody loves a really good villain. If you're now going to try and set up the standard, which is that nobody with a disability can play potentially in Davros's case, quite literally, one of the most iconic villains in an entire franchise, then you're not actually aiding people. You're certainly not aiding disabled actors. Yes. You're denying them the opportunity to play iconic characters. Are we going to now turn around and say, well, Darth Vader was technically a disabled guy, so we're going to have to take him out of the suit of armor now because we can't have a bad disabled character? And we're going to just turn him into generic space twink number 5,000, and he's perfect and he's fine.
But like you said, so many people fucking want to cosplay as villains. So many people like villains. So many people, it doesn't matter how many villains you portray with a scar. People also like scars if it's in the right place.
Well, there's a power associated with the antagonist as well. to be able to say, like, okay, Davros may have had a physically crippled body because of injuries he sustained in the war that he was fighting in, but it didn't stop him from achieving a position of enormous power and influence. It didn't undo his like incredible intellect and his military genius, and the fact that he became one of the most dangerous antagonists in the whole of Doctor Who. Like that's an achievement. It's a negative achievement ultimately because he's evil, but it doesn't matter. The point is that's something that he did, and his physical impairments weren't a barrier to doing that. And
that's because the writers don't see these characters as independent third parties that they are writing for. They see these characters as extensions of themselves. So every penalty that they have is them. Every extension, like this bonus, is them. And so if you suddenly write them as Davros, they think you're independently insulting them individually. And that applies to everyone in this certain group. And this is why the idea of one person representing an entire group is so horrendous, in that you can never do anything with that character ever again throughout the entire history of the universe, because you will be insulting thousands of people rather than an individual person. Loads of people could write Davros as like an individual character that had an entire separate life and went through a unique existence that led him to this position. But the moment you try and write him as a disabled person that represents disabled people, you cut off so many possibilities in that guy's life. You cannot write him as a character anymore. And until this entire, it's not a case of this point of view hurts the ability to writing. It is literally until this point of view is no longer even considered as a basis of writing, then you will always end up in the same position.
And
I do like as well, like how their whole philosophy was like, we don't want to associate certain groups with villains and evil, so they instead made him a white British male.
Oh no, I genuinely think
brilliant.
I think he said exactly what he intended to say. Because if you look at the quote, I mean, in my videos I keep quoting it because to me it was so extreme and so out there that I just kept putting it in. But he wasn't saying other people. He said, I have a problem with this, and I and other people in my unit have a problem with this, and we had a problem with associating disabled people with evil. It's like everyone else didn't. No, it was him and the people in his unit did. And so as far as I'm concerned, everyone else is fine. It is literally as that he and the people that with him should be fired, because quite frankly, if you can't even perceive a certain group of people to exist in a fantasy universe without being evil, that's a step too far, and you clearly can't write those people in any kind of story.
Let's say
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, if you follow that to its natural conclusion, you not only prevent actors who are disabled or who are using wheelchairs from playing certain roles like villains or even morally ambiguous characters, you're going to have to go back and erase characters where the disability is inherent to the character. So, for example, Richard III, do you say, well, we just can't have a performance of Richard III anymore because he's a humpback and he's disabled? So, no, we're not going to ever have that play again. And I know the Royal Shakespeare Company is very woke, so they're going to have to consider that. Are they going to do Richard III again? And if they do it again, are they going to have him as a humpback? Are they going to just have him as a straight white man because only straight white men are evil? So are they going to erase that character? And not just Richard III, but any disabled character that
it's going all the way back around,
whether in theater or is this what we're doing now? Can villains only be able-bodied? Are you going to go back through the Western canon and delete and erase all of the villains that aren't, able-bodied white men?
I'm just imagining Captain Hook where they just CGI on a really shitty hand.
You have to remember, like in theatrical releases, it used to be only men that could play any character. So it would only be men that would play even female characters or anything else. If you go back far enough to like Victorian times and everything. So we may genuinely going back far enough where everything gets so sensitive that you can't act as any of these people, that we just end up with everyone being white men all over again.
I was about to say, we're circling all the way back around. You see these people who are like, oh, we got a humpback, can't have that, this, that, can't have that, can't have that.
Yeah.
And then they just like, they start getting to a point where it's such shorthand. They like see somebody with, no arm. They just go, ugh, disabled people. Ugh.
Yeah, it's kind of like how feminism has gone through a circle.
You would assume that their end point would be that, anyone who's from a protected group can only ever be portrayed in a positive light. They have to be the heroes.
Well, so
they have to be morally infallible.
Buying those premises, right, which we never would, but let's say we actually did, there's only ever been evil disabled characters, and that has created a subconscious element in all of us that whenever we see a disabled person, we automatically go, oof, they're probably a bit evil. And that's something that's happening. All right, RTD, what's the solution then? It's like, well, we need to create more characters in fiction that are disabled, that are good. And it's like, okay, let's do it. What have we got? And it's like this cartoonishly stupid woman in a wheelchair that fires rockets, to the point where everyone who sees that laughs. I need to know if that's what Russell thought was going to happen, or if he thought everyone was going to fucking fist pump, be like, yeah, disabled people.
I really hope he thought that was funny, because
rockets,
if he
man.
didn't see how funny that was, then he's just completely gone. Because that was very funny.
I honestly think that was legit. They thought that was going to be like disabled power. Yay.
Which is devastating, because like otherwise I'd be
that,
mounting a defense of that character. If you're going to box tick in that way, then at least make it funny and kind of enjoyable, and you don't make too much of a political point of it. And I thought, if that's the motive with James Bond wheelchair woman, then that's fine. But yeah, now you mention it, he probably did think that she's a really genuinely heroic character, in which case,
and also
I would like to point out as well, the resistance leader from Invasion of the Daleks, like way back in the 1960s, this was still in black and white, he was in a wheelchair, like trying to fight against the Daleks in post-apocalyptic London. And that they incorporated that into his character in such a way that it didn't come across as stupid or pandering. It was just a man struggling with like whatever he was able to do physically, and it didn't have him shooting rockets out of his wheelchair or anything ridiculous like that. That was, I guess, how you would handle stuff like that. But they can't get away with that now. They can't let it go. It has to be like, no, they are super powered because of their wheelchair. Like, just
the one I can't remember was. And it's one of my favorite episodes, but I don't know the name of it. I'm terrible with names. It's just how I am. But where Martha is going around the world telling people the story of the Doctor. And it's got the Master in it, and the Doctor is contained by the Master, but Martha tells everyone else the story of the Doctor and eventually frees him. That is about as great a story of how normal people can make a difference as I could possibly imagine, because she literally is supposed to have gone around the entire world telling people this story of the power of the Doctor, and as long as everyone thinks of the Doctor at the same time, then the entire world will create something out of it.
It's a bit too fairy tale-y for me, but I get what you're saying.
No, but it was literally like what the Master has set in place had focused everybody's thoughts into one kind of being. But what I mean is, that was literally everybody around the world's focused mental energy into one being, compared to this, which was just, a few people thought about the. Well, it was even only really one, really, wasn't it? It was Donna's daughter. Donna's daughter thought of this, and she just flicked a few switches, and it was all over.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It was.
There's
entire different scales.
She undid the damage done to those soldiers right at the nick of time, because they walked into the room and said, "We have orders to kill you." And they didn't shoot. Was useful soldiers ever.
Like, I don't know whether you like answered this or anything already, but I don't understand why Donna died in that scene and then just revived for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Like, she did actually die, and then just 3 minutes later came back to life.
I'm not entirely clear how she came back to life. She just it's like her alarm just went off and she's just woke up.
Went off.
Generally the only reason I can think is you were supposed to think she died, and then she came back a few minutes later when you were no longer supposed to think she was. Like, it was literally just for emotional impact. There was no story reason, there was no character reason, like even an attempt.
Revival is the payoff to a setup, but there was no setup for it.
No, she died. Like, she genuinely, like, as far as everyone else is concerned, died and then just woke up randomly.
Is it just me, or is this whole concept of bringing back David Tennant, bringing back Donna, it just kind of feels like, what can I liken this to? It's like, I don't know, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, where it's like you've got Indy back and you've got Marion back, but they're older now, and like the actors aren't really that invested in it. And it's just like, well, let's just bring back some familiar things for people.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have to picture season. What is this series?
Who cares?
Yeah, well, you have to picture that as an entity digging its fangs into like David Tennant's run and just sucking any last bit of juice they can out of it and being like, "This is us now." And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
is that how you see it?
Oh yeah, that's how I see all of it. Marvel's the same, Star Wars is the same, just vampires.
With this was 100% cynical. This wasn't like, oh, we got a really artistic, creative story to tell with this Doctor. It's like, no, we're just going to bring back David Tennant because we know people aren't liking Doctor Who anymore. Let's bring back the most popular Doctor that's still alive and like hope that we can recapture the magic. That's
it's
what
like
it feels
carbon
like. It's really
offsetting. It's just they go for an entire series where they experiment and it's really unpopular, and then they think, well, that's fine because we'll do like 3 episode special, and then we'll give you someone that you remember liking again. That's fine. Build up the credit again, and then we can do another brand new experimental thing for an entire series after that. That will definitely work, guys. Trust me. The viewing figures will be brilliant all the way through season 14 or whatever we're on. Except, of course, that they're not, because is it half the number of people watched even this 60th anniversary has watched the 50th one, I think it is. And it's all on a downward trajectory because you can't keep doing this. You can't keep saying, we're going to bring back the guy you like for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to use that goodwill on whatever we're trying to push next. People don't like being patronized, and they know when they are being patronized, and they know when they're being taken for a ride on a wheelchair or otherwise.
Literally pick a franchise and then tell yourself what you would do to do the equivalent, and it has been done. Star Wars, like bring Han, Luke, and Leia. It's like, yeah. Star Trek's like, well, I guess it'd be the TNG crew. It's like, yep, they've done that. It's like Jurassic Park. I guess you bring back all the main characters of the first film. Yep, they did that. And you're like, fuck, what else we got? It's like Predator. It's like they haven't brought Arnie back in that yet, so we can be thankful about that. But, Terminator, he's been in every single fucking one of the sequels. They've all sucked ass anyway. Like this is the attitude. It's just like, this will work, right? This is what we do. And this was absolutely, remember, Doctor Who was about to be destroyed, like ended, stopped, experiencing like a complete cancellation.
Yeah, I think it was at one point, and it was only they came back to it and like, well, could we revive it maybe?
If anything could revive it,
these kind of viewing figures,
Tennant, Tate, and RTD, and it's like, well, that combination evokes a very, very healthy and strong time for that show. So, but I mean, we've seen what they did with it, so it's like, never mind.
The thing is, as well, like, it's so fucking cowardly because this is not supposed to be the same Doctor. This is like the 14th Doctor, so he's a different reincarnation of him, but he's got the same face. Okay, they even put him though in the same clothes. Like, why? Yeah. He's supposed to be a unique identity now. You're not going to do anything with that because it's David Tennant. So, of course, we've got to put him back in the suit that everyone recognizes him from because that stirs the member berries. Of course it does.
But he did an interview where him and Russell T Davies was together. And they're like, are you a new Doctor? And he was like, well, it feels like a bit of a waste if I'm an entirely different character. And I agree, right? There has to be some kind of link to the past, otherwise there's no point in bringing him back in the first place. So I agree that it should be linked. And then we
can give him a chance to do something new. He's an actor, a great actor.
Yeah, he might be an actor, but you're trying to save a series, right? So when you're trying to
series at all,
no. No, it doesn't matter what's happened. It matters. Like, look at it from the perspective of a new person entering. It doesn't matter what's happened. It matters what you're trying to do now. So you're trying to save an entire destroyed franchise from utter and complete destruction. You're probably going to want to try something new and not just repeat stuff from the past. So you can repeat some things from the past, but you're probably going to want to not repeat everything because everything killed it. And so I do get that. Obviously, I'm against what they did with it, but I'm not against like also having a merge of his previous characters and his new character combined. The issue is that there's so much stuff they could have done. There's so many stories they could have done. Like, if you got River involved as well, and people will be like, oh no, you're just destroying more stuff. It's like, yes, but you have to remember how destroyed this franchise is, right? After all of the characters, all of the stuff that's happened, you needed to absolutely wipe out stuff from the past to replace it with new things. And I don't even think you can do it with one series. I think they'd need him and River and all the old characters back from multiple series just to get people back on side.
It would be catastrophic if it was written the way that they've written this episode, though.
I entirely agree. Yeah, I am not defending this episode at all. The moment you tried to write this episode, you would kill your series. And I don't know any way forward from this episode.
I find that whatever you wrote his character to be it 100% the same as his previous, as number 10, or if you make him completely different, if you make him half and half, or if you make him a version of 10 that's even like more aggressive, more ego driven, I think all of those options can work. But like what they seemed to go with was it's 10, he's back, but he has no spine. You're like, oh great.
This episode is Jodie Whittaker just like carried on.
I mean, there's some stuff he says that I think is in character. There's some stuff he said that I even enjoyed here and there. And like, I think that David Tennant is still a great actor, and he still nailed what he had to nail. I just don't, I don't like the majority of the writing in the episode, and that includes the character writing for him and several others.
I'm not against him as an actor. I just think Jodie Whittaker could have done any of. I think Jodie Whittaker could have said any of these lines, and it would have still worked.
I don't think the whole scene about like Donna and Rose lecturing the Doctor, that would never have been allowed to happen. Like if somehow you'd reversed all the genders of this one, so you had two men essentially like lecturing Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, they would never have shown that, and Jodie Whittaker would never have been able to sell it.
Yeah, but that's a specific our current year social issue rather than a thing within the universe itself. Like that is a problem with the people writing it and their obsession with current year politics rather than the series.
Yeah. That's true. But well, yeah, as we said just like 5 minutes ago, like the viewing figures of this episode have not panned out. Like it's sitting at something like 5 million viewers, I think that it got. Pretty much from Amalgamated, which is only about 1 million better than Jodie Whittaker's run, which is not the win that they were expecting from this. And I think it kind of shows the degree to which the Doctor Who brand has just been horrendously damaged.
Yeah, join the fucking fire, innit? Like
might
the rest of them are realizing this. Like Marvel's having that horrible realization right now of how their IP is burning. Star Wars is afraid to release a movie because they know what's going to happen in the box office if they do.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, I consider myself more from a normie perspective, like not a normally English perspective. I know Doctor Who a lot better than I know Star Wars. I've got a lot more merch about Doctor Who than I have of Star Wars. I've got the other sonic screwdrivers and stuff. I don't have Star Wars, and I think this one cuts a lot deeper than Star Wars does. Star Wars feels like an IP further and further away than to the traditional kind of Englishman point of view.
Well, that's a truism. The thing that's been destroyed that I care most about cuts me most deeply. I mean, obviously, I give more of a shit about Star Wars, so I care more about what Star Wars has gone through.
I know.
I understand the parallel between the two, which is that both are very deeply loved and have a very strong core audience, which is now feeling pretty miserable about what has happened to both of them. And the fact that pretty much the same thing seems to have happened to both of them, and in quite a short space of time. Doctor Who's probably more useful in this because Russell T Davies, you know, it was only in, is it the late 2000s when he left, when he was still telling stories, and in the space of, what, a decade at most, it's gone down to this. So it's a more useful, like, dramatic, even explainer of how quickly this social change has impacted film. In Star Wars.
Well, the question then is like, well, where is what are the ratings going to be like when we actually get the properly new Doctor in? Because David Tennant was supposed to be the hype man for this new guy. He was going to get the viewers back because everyone remembers him, everyone loves the 10th Doctor. This was going to be the thing that was going to bump up the viewing figures big time. And then when the new guy comes in, enthusiasm for Doctor Who is going to be at an all-time high, and it hasn't happened. And so it makes you think, well, okay, like how far is it going to crash when this poor other guy comes in?
Well, it raises an interesting question from my perspective, because one of the things that I've been harping on about is that essentially the people in Hollywood and BBC to a degree, it's impossible for them to make a story that the audience resonates with because they no longer hold the morals of the audience. Like they have an entirely different moral paradigm to the audience. Now, Russell T Davies was fully capable of writing stories that the audience liked with morals that they agreed with, and now he's changed. So my question would be more regarding, do you think that he can write a story that the audience still agrees with from a moral perspective? So like the good and evil, or do you think that he would be capable of writing one which would mix the story of what Hollywood wants with regards to changing the moral paradigm compared to what the audience is willing to accept with the qualities of good story? Because I know a lot of people like the quality of a good story for them is like the hero's journey and everything. It's more academic than moral. Depends where you land on that.
It depends about if you are. The essential distinction is: are you an artist telling a story, or are you a propagandist who is deliberately breaking immersion in order to tell the audience something you think they need to hear? And almost without fail, the propagandist who sacrifices the fundamental tenet of drama, which is the immersion and the suspension of disbelief, in order to push any moral message, is not going to be as popular as the person who wants to tell a very, very good story, which may have moral presuppositions baked into it, but is not trying to lecture the audience about a particular moral political message. I don't think it matters if it's the woke person doing this in the case of Doctor Who, or if it's some Christian evangelist nutbag doing God's Not Dead. It's equally cringe because you're still lecturing people in their seats and not inviting them into a story which contains its own reason for being.
Do you not think that
to answer the specific question about Russell T Davies, like, is he capable of doing it? Yeah, he's clearly proven that he is a capable writer when he is unfettered by. Yeah, well, exactly. And like he has done it in the past. So like when he's unfettered by like modern political considerations and the constant need to drive home this message in everything he does, he can do it. It's just I don't think he's willing to let go of that platform now.
To almost push back on that from that Children in Need special or whatever, and this episode and what he said about it, this looks like this is him. This is his work. He's happy with it.
Yeah, I think I think he has now been subsumed by the message to the point where that's kind of all he cares about. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was his motivation for coming back to doing Doctor Who again.
I think he's basically said that that's why he came back. Like he's spoken about the ecology point of view and how he feels like before he wanted to give children hope, but now he wants to give children like he didn't want children to be scared before, but now he's more than happy to terrify them because of the world is in such dire straits. So we definitely know where he lands.
To use Platoon's maxim for this, like he is no longer an artist, he's a propagandist. With a thin veneer of art sitting on top of it, and that's makes him pretty shit, really, as a creative.
If he was still an artist and not a propagandist, would the BBC accept that? And would Platoon was mentioning earlier that Disney are invested in Doctor Who, so would they accept it, or would they say no, we don't want this guy? We want someone who is more. They wouldn't say propagandist. We want someone who'll push the message. They'd probably say something like,
"I don't buy it."
We want someone who is more in tune with modern ideas and who is willing to use the platform to do good in the world. That's how they word it.
At the very least, with the BBC, even if somehow they lucked upon someone who was just purely artistically driven, they had no interest in current day politics, they would still have to wrestle with all of the quotas, all of the diversity demands that the BBC puts on everything that they put out. That would all have to be put in there anyway, and it would be as clunky as it always is with everything that they fucking do. So, like, there's no way to escape it with the output that they produce.
When I was looking at Amazon, they have these diversity quotas and they have all these rules about, for example, a certain percentage of the cast and crew need to be of all these different identity groups, and a certain percentage of screen time needs to be dedicated to women. And they have all these rules. Like, you can go and look them up. They're on Amazon Studios' website. And I was reading through them and thinking, my God, like, if even a really good writer would seriously struggle to write something that was compelling and quality with all of these limitations, because this really hamstrings the writing. There is so much that you can and can't do. And I don't know if
what you're producing then isn't art. It's art within the framework of propaganda.
Yeah, it's an extremely restrictive framework. I know that Amazon Studios has that on paper, and like I say, you can read it on their studio website. I don't know if the BBC have it written down in the same way, or if it's just sort of the unspoken reality.
I'm sure they have it written down. Whether you'd have access to it without a Freedom of Information request is probably a different thing. But I'm sure they have it somewhere. But like, you can find the Oscars one. It's literally on the internet. You can literally find it within a Google search. It's not as if this is hidden. I think the issue comes down to whether it's just as much as, is this a limitation which is put on people voluntarily, so it's like, well, you can write within this kind of bounds, or is it so ingrained within the industry that it's no longer just a voluntary limitation or just a fact of life? Like, we can no longer hire the best actors for the role. We have to hire people within this very specific group. You have to remember, in Doctor Who, there is literally a line of Donna saying that her daughter can't act. Like, that's actually in the episode itself.
I love that line. That's so meta. She can't act, and I don't know how.
But it's also true,
I don't
right?
think it was intended
also
to be
true.
clearly, but yeah. I think I guess it goes back to that saying they had about the Soviet Union, where it's like after a while they didn't have to censor people because people censored themselves, and I think it's probably the same with the industry. It's probably tacitly acknowledged amongst all the writers, all the actors, all the creatives that if you don't say the right things and put the right things into your scripts, you're probably not going to get many job offers. And so they just do it because it helps them to fit in. And whether they really believe it or whether it's just a necessary evil that they go through, ultimately, it doesn't matter. The output's the same.
I think you need to keep in mind, as much as it could be like mandates from the higher ups that are making a lot of these things happen, I think that they were desperate to get RTD, and that him bringing back Davros as Davros is seen and everything else would have been fine with the BBC. I doubt they put on him that you can't be having a wheelchair, piss, blah, blah, blah. I think that was all him. And I think that the crazy sci-fi mechanics related to trans people, women versus men stuff, I'm pretty sure that's all RTD as well. I doubt the BBC said you need to make it in Doctor Who that women have the power to release power because men can't, you know what I mean? It's like that's getting into the weeds of like the writing in the episode. They would have happily like mandated more time for women and maybe representation for trans people and acknowledgement of them in universe or something like that. I could buy that. I don't buy that like they forced him to do any of the crazy shit, and we've heard him defend it.
The only thing that makes me dubious is his face when they go, you would never understand that as a male presenting Time Lord, because that is the face of somebody who's been beaten down to destruction. And it's just like, what on earth is going on? That is not a happy face. That is a miserable, what is happening to my life kind of face. And in any other situation, I'd be more than willing to accept that Tennant had just gone along with all of it. But like, he looks really miserable in that scene. So I don't know what caused it.
I mean, in both cases, Tennant and Russell T Davies, you can find interviews going back before they were both attached to the new Doctor Who again, where they're pushing pretty much exactly those same points as they're pushing in the episode. Russell T Davies was giving some awards speech, I think 3 years ago, when he was preaching about LGB without the T is literally murder. And David Tennant was going on about how cringe and awful all the fans who criticize trans people are. Like, I think these are things that as MauLer was saying, I think they do genuinely believe it. And this was there because it was a positive artistic decision to have it in there, as opposed to it being mandated from on high. Quotas don't tend to be particularly discriminating, ironically.
But put it this way, maybe I was suggesting that it was more Tennant's wife.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that this... one thing that struck me when I was watching this whole episode was, this is really passé. This kind of feels like a cowboy movie released in the mid-70s. It's like, really, man? You're arriving a little bit late to the party here, and it's the kind of thing you would have seen really common 3 or 4, even 5 years ago. But now everyone looks at it. Everyone knows what's going on. They know exactly. They've seen all the cliches. They know that he's pushing the message. Like Drinker, in your video, you mentioned that even the BBC are calling it. They said this is just being used to push the message. And I look at this and it does kind of feel like an old guy whose politics have grown very, very stale and doesn't realize that what he's doing has become really cliched and passé, and everyone can see it.
I think they've obviously done to death the whole like female empowerment thing with the previous Doctor. They've tackled racism quite a few times. I think transgenderism is probably the only big hot topic issue that they still haven't fully taken on with Doctor Who. And it seems like, well, this is your very first episode of your new run and you're just going in hard on this stuff. It makes me wonder, like, what's left in terms of big social justice issues.
There'll be a new one. There's always a new one.
We've done environmentalism. We've had,
I don't know, because if you look at what he said, Russell T Davies said this one is supposed to be the kid-friendly episode. So it's perfectly possible that this was the one where they like sledgehammered everyone over the face. It was meant for kids, so it was just like blunt, so that everyone could understand what was going on. And then the later ones, we tail off, and then it's more like nuanced for a more adult. Like it's meant to convince adults rather than children. And I actually think that'll be really interesting to see how they go on, because we're not going to know until it happens. But if they dial everything back, it will literally be an admission that we were only so obvious because we thought we could get away with it with kids. Whereas when it actually came to an adult audience, we decided to dial it back because we know you're more intelligent. And so we had to take it a different route with you.
You have got so much more faith in the BBC's perception of the British public than I do.
No. It's not faith. It is Machiavellianism. It is.
I honestly interpret their attitude towards normal people in Britain as, attention, peasants. We're about to tell you what to think. Now you just be quiet and absorb our knowledge.
Something I read about his what he'd said about the future episodes. So I saw that little like promo where it's they on some kind of space station. Don't know. It seems to be just Tennant and Donna. Oh, sorry, and Tate. And I was like, okay. If this, and there's like screaming and dark corridors, stuff, I was like, if this is a horror episode with just those two, and they get to talk a lot about their history and the state of the current Doctor and what's going on, and that it's actually like genuinely scary, I was like, maybe this will be a quote unquote good episode. But I saw the comments about it. He was like, no, it's not going to be scary. It's going to be weird. And I was like,
they've said it's going to be weird, and they do stuff to kids. Is his description of it.
So yeah, my faith in the potential for RTD Doctor Who is fucking plummeted. It's at the core of the earth at this point.
That was Doctor Who.
I think that's the worst thing. It is so easy. This would be so easy to get right. And I think that's my problem with everything from Marvel to everything else. It is so easy to do this correctly. People aren't even asking for anything astronomical or out there or like really pushing the cutting edge of anything. It is the basics of writing that people are asking for, and you can't even do that.
Do you think at the moment they're going through a period of experimentation with all of these different franchises of how much political messaging can we shove into it before people rebel?
Yes,
so okay, we'll dial it back a little bit for the next one, and we'll see how people accept that. Because ultimately, the more of that stuff you put in, the more it impairs your ability to tell a good story.
I don't think they're organized enough to do that. Like they don't have the organization abilities to turn around and say, well, how far can we push this? Should be this far, this far. They're not organized. They're not. It's just a mess. When you actually look at the cultural landscape, you look at the identity hiring and the diversity hiring. For example, in the Marvels, they had to hire Nia DaCosta for that because she was a woman, and you can't have a man directing it because it's a movie about women. That's their policy. I don't know if that's an official policy, but that's certainly the unofficial, unspoken policy around these movies at Marvel. Things like that, and you end up with these hack directors who are making all of these very basic mistakes. And as for the extent of the politics, a lot of that, I suppose, would be executive oversight and editing. So you take the finished product, and then the executives might think, we'd like to keep the part where like the disabled guy in a wheelchair confesses his love to the trans kid or something, but we're gonna have to edit that out because it's a little bit too far, maybe. But I think it's the cultural landscape is just such a mess at the minute, and like you were saying earlier, Drinker, people are censoring themselves, writers are censoring themselves. The reason, I mean, Disparu, you were just asking, well, this is so easy, and it is easy. Like you could very easily, I'm sure, anyone here could very easily make a very good Star Wars movie or a very good episode of Doctor Who. The problem is the cultural landscape will not permit that right now.
Yeah, but why, right? It comes down to, for me anyway, my theory has always been the values involved. What people want from an entertainment series, it's not just I want to escape from reality, it's I want something to make me feel something, and you only feel something which actually replicates your kind of value system within a story. So like what we have now is a lot of essentially evil people trying to pretend to be good people, and then they're wondering why the audience don't like associate with the evil people that's supposed to be good. And I think what you get with this kind of stuff is I don't think they're capable of writing good stories because of that, because they have no idea how to do it. They don't understand the values of the audience. They can't even, it's physically impossible for them to understand the values of the audience. They come from an entirely different point of view, an entirely different moral system. and so anything they put will essentially be seen by the audience as evil, which is why, like, I will watch Doctor Who. I will watch Doctor Who and see Meep as the good guy, and they have no idea why.
Yeah.
And they can't even understand from an ironic point of view why I could possibly think that.
Yeah, I mean, I did a 30-minute video analyzing Galadriel as a villain, like unironically, and it works perfectly. Like, it just worked because she is a villain, but they didn't realize that. They thought she was a heroic character in Rings of Power.
Because on that note, because you said you did a video on the Marvels, right? Like, Carol is she's like seen as she's seen as a horrifying villain by many Kree, like, and justifiably so. She burst onto their planet and destroyed their life support systems, and then started a civil war that she abandoned.
And didn't fix it, even though she had the power to restart the sun.
That's a villain. That's a bad guy, and it comes back again to Captain Marvel, the first of her movies, where she is a member of the Kree that has been told a lie and that forced essentially into a particular position. She realizes, not just too late that, all right, there's something I can do about it. Then she realizes, like, the Kree are bombing Earth. You got to stop them. And it's like, okay, compare her approach to that, having to kill all of these people who may very well have been just as lied to as she was just hours ago or a day ago, whatever. And she's saying, woo, when she kills them. She's really happy. Compare that to Mission Impossible Fallout, where Ethan is thinking about the mission he's got to do with, like, the bad guys, so to speak, and he might have to kill police. And he's thinking about it, and they, like, start to, like, fade out the sounds of the gunshots and the screaming and stuff, and it's just like somber music, and he's just staring at the bodies, sort of thing. And it's just like the recognition, the difference, the understanding of what's happening. But the people who wrote Captain Marvel have no idea what's happening. They're like, this is great. She's killing all the bad guys. Isn't that cool? You like really big, cool, special firepower, big superheroes, right? And they're like, what the fuck?
No, but it comes from...
That's the power of being a simple-minded moron when it comes to writing stories. Like, you don't even have to think about these moral conundrums. You can just breeze right past it and just go like, haha, good guy kill bad guy. Good.
Also, watch Mission Impossible Fallout. It's great.
It is very great, yeah. Should we do a quick the Marvel's box office watch to see what the current tallies are?
Just to cheer everybody up after that discussion about Doctor Who.
It's currently sitting at 187.8 million worldwide. The domestic is 77.5 million, and the international gross is 110 million. And that is it. It's probably not even going to get to 100 million domestic.
That recent Monday is the funny one for me.
Get it done.
Monday, it made a whopping $339,000 at the box office. Tuesday, 495,000. So it's going up. It's going up.
Do we have how much per cinema? Those are always fun.
Oh, they are fun. You can actually average them out to see how many people are sitting
on Monday. Like the average per
screening.
On Monday, the average per cinema was $110.
Well done. Good job, Disney.
There's like 4 tickets.
That's insane. It's funny. We find it so funny, but like it's exactly as we expected it to go, kind of. Like
it's worse. Like, I mean, did anyone expect it to be like this low? Because
from what I gathered,
no.
We had predictions running from the past 2 years, and none of us went this low. I think
MauLer was probably the lowest. Actually, he said 350, and I laughed at him. Said, "No, never go that low."
Is it currently on track to be the biggest box office bomb of all time?
It might be relative to budget, yes. So
it'll be up there,
I think
not even. It's dubious at this point. I assume it will hit 200 million, but it potentially might not.
Didn't Mortal Engines have a record at one point, or did The Flash beat that? Because that was an expensive movie.
I imagine
The Flash was expensive, but I think its tally wasn't as bad as this.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I read that the Marvels is worse, much worse.
Yeah, this is worse than The Flash. I'm just not sure about Mortal Engines, whatever that got.
Yeah, I just remember Mortal Engines being one of the biggest ones of all time.
There's interesting because this kind of ties into a recent statement that Bob Iger made regarding the Marvels. Actually, apparently it suffered from a lack of supervision on the set.
Oh, I really hate this.
It needed more studio interference. That was the problem.
It is the idea.
48 edits weren't enough. They needed to do 50 edits, that would have saved it.
This gets even better, right? Let's spin the wheel of excuses and see where we end up. Because this time around, it's so Disney CEO Bob Iger said at the New York Times DealBook Summit, following the Marvels flopping at the box office, that there was a lack of supervision on the set as a result of the COVID pandemic. Because we're still blaming things on COVID, I guess. And I think Donald Trump is probably in there somewhere as well.
Probably.
As a reason why it failed.
You
But
just want to
yeah.
you just want to have like a camera on him, and he's almost sad, and like he's unshaven, got a bottle of alcohol. He just goes, "It was shit, okay? It was shit. I know it was shit. You know it was
Just
shit."
admit it.
Like,
No, but he took it over. Like, he was the one that fired the previous guy, took it over. I was like, yeah, I'm going to save everything. You know that he saw himself as, like, riding in on cavalry horseback to save Disney from the previous guy. And he's like, no, actually, no, I'm going to have to throw that guy under the bus. And that, like, he's still doing that, but that guy is only going to throw under the bus for so long before you actually have to take the repercussions of your own actions. The idea, like, the simple idea that you think a movie can be saved by oversight? Do you even understand how stupid that is? Like, these writers will write something that is absolutely horrendous that no one would want to watch, but then an executive somewhere will come in and just go, by the way, if you change these 5 things, then everyone will love it. Like, no, obviously an executive can't save a terrible movie. The person that needs to be fired is the people writing the movie, the people directing the movie, and anybody who hired the writers and directors of the pissing movie that sucks so hard that no amount of executive oversight would save it. And yet,
I mean, I would posit to you that it is theoretically possible an executive could look at a failing project and say, nope, we've got the wrong people attached to this one. We do need to interfere, and we're going to change things up. We're going to get a different director, or we're going to get different writers in to fix it. Like, I think Ike Perlmutter apparently was quite useful in that regard of keeping the MCU on track and finding the right people to direct their movies. So it can theoretically work. It's just that, yeah, as a general principle, I would agree. Studio executives are not creatives, and so they're not the right people to direct the course of a movie.
If those people could entirely write what was created before them and just immediately just go, this is all trash, I need to start from scratch, then yes, because it's essentially you beginning from their own creation. But from everything that I've heard, the way these movies are written is you get hired to do a specific thing and everything else is already set in stone. And so you have to write towards an action scene, or you have to write towards this. And so nobody actually has entire creative control. Everybody's trying to fill in the gaps for somebody else that's already planned something else. It's a bit on a conveyor belt. I don't think that works at all. And I think when it comes to this entire creative thing is, look, the amount of times I've seen somebody create a terrible movie, and at this moment specifically, I'm thinking of Taika Waititi, and then just gets promoted to something else, despite the fact that he's created failures beforehand, is so astronomical that nobody in Hollywood seems to care about somebody else's prior record.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the point. Is that I'm not of the school of thought that says that studio interference and things can never save a movie. But if the studio and the executive had made the right decision in the first place, they wouldn't be in a position where they need to make more interventions to make the film work. There are interviews now finally starting to come out for the Marvels, because I'm still working on my video for that one. So you can now find Nia DaCosta, for example, talking to, I think it was Collider, and being asked which her favorite of all the MCU films was, or which one inspired the Marvels. And the one she said that was one of the best MCU films, Iron Man 3. And if I'm hiring someone, and I'm sitting there and I would ask them as like Bob Iger or whoever's in charge of Marvel, I'd say, what was your favorite Marvel film? And if someone told me Iron Man 3, I would not be giving them the job.
Do you think she even watched Iron Man 3? Or was it just like, let's just name a movie?
She said it influenced it in practical effects terms as well, because that effect when they have the fire under the skin. And apparently she spoke to the director about how that worked.
I feel bad for all the Iron Man 3 fans in chat right now. There's a few of them, you know.
I love them. No, that makes me like the Marvels more.
There was a very telling interview where she talked about making that film and straight up said there would be scenes that we were shooting where I had no fucking clue what it was supposed to be or what was happening. And I just thought, what a revealing remark from the director of the movie.
Well, that'd be in line with everything else we've seen, right? Like the
well, as Gary said, like
Waldron.
they're not hired so much as they're cast in the role of director, but they don't actually do anything. You know, they're just there to oversee this project, this machine that's already up and running when they get there.
They
Bear in mind as well, she
don't
was
have
one of the
scripts.
writers. They had 3 writers on this, and Nia Costa was one of them. So she did have some creative control. It's not like she just showed
she was
up
the
and
director.
was presented with a script. Yeah, she was a director, and she also was one of 3 writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So she did have quite a bit of creative control.
Great control, you would say.
Yeah.
I imagine like being in the shoes of someone like Chloe Zhao. It's like, hey, I just made this movie on a budget of like $50 about a woman who drives around in a van and talks to people. You know, won an Oscar. I'm pretty happy about that. Okay, what am I doing next? Right, I'm in charge of like a $250 million ensemble cast action superhero movie.
Provided me
what the
like
fuck am I even supposed to be doing here?
Yeah,
I mean, when they made Thor, they brought in Kenneth Branagh, who had done dozens of movies by that stage, and he directed a lot of very well regarded stuff. He'd done all his Shakespeare stuff by that stage, so that makes sense. So you go from Kenneth Branagh, who's basically a genius, right? And now you're hiring Nia DaCosta. Like, what? How do you go from Kenneth Branagh to Nia DaCosta, a woman who has 2 crappy, low-budget indie movies behind her, on a $250 million movie? Like, it's absolute insanity. Talk about executive oversight. Why did no one say, no, we can't have this woman directing this? She doesn't have the experience. It's just nuts.
For Captain America, it was Joe Johnston, who made The Rocketeer. Like, let's not forget that.
Nice.
Then you got, obviously, Kenneth Branagh. I don't think anyone needs to go over all of those films. Jon Favreau, perfectly established. Certainly, that was like one of his high points for his career, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of like stuff he was making. And then Avengers getting Joss Whedon. It's like, it almost seems like they're hiring people on their experience and their ability to do these projects going forward. That's interesting. I wonder what happened. That completely got annihilated by the time we reached like the transition from phase 3 to 4.
That is not the criteria by which they hire creatives. You know, it's not down to experience and skill and ability. It's other things that you're born with, you might say. I was going to say is like all of this feeds into the result that we've had recently that Disney are now on track to lose $750 million across 13 films this year in historic year of box office flops. 13 movies. I think only 2 of them have actually turned a profit out of all of this. I'm just looking through their lineup of films this year.
The Guardians 3, that made a profit, didn't it? And
that made it, well, marginal, not huge, but I
What was the other one?
I'm just reading through the list here. So let's see. So Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania had a deficit of 37 million apparently, so not good. Guardians of the Galaxy, 98 million. Little Mermaid, that lost 40. Boogeyman lost 14. Elemental lost a couple of million. Indiana Jones lost 158 million. Haunted Mansion lost 140 million. The Creator lost money as well, actually.
Quite a miserable centennial for Disney.
How bad is it that we consider breaking even a success? Like, that's really, well, when you make these movies, you expect to like at least double your money, like preferably.
If you're going to put in like 250 million, you're going to expect some pretty major profits because that's a huge gamble.
Opportunity cost, right? You spend all this time, effort, connections, networking to create something that only makes that much money. That's absurd. That's terrible.
Yeah. And it's not just that, like, you would have rejected lots of other projects before you got to the project you decided to put your money into.
Oh, 100%. And like, it is a case of, yes, not everything you invest in makes money. And so some things will be a success, it will be a failure. But when everything in Disney you're investing in is a failure, that just becomes then a point where you will never invest anything in the future. There will become a point where,
well, obviously that's why their stock price is dropping.
Well, exactly. Yeah. This is just a no-go at this point.
Yeah, I mean, losing $750 million in a year is crushing. because Disney doesn't have that much money to throw away on stuff like this. And so when they have a whole year of deficits, that's not something they can easily bounce back from. You know, a company the size of Amazon could absorb that kind of loss. Disney can't.
They can't even like break glass in case of emergency, because all of what they did this year could be considered breaking glass in case of emergency. A lot of it, anyway.
Well, they've still got bringing back Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man.
That plus Avengers is their last move for the MCU. Like, that's all they've got left.
Amazon is that there's. Go ahead.
Amazon's break glass is like just their normal retail business that will always keep going. They can expand it as much as they want. They can expand it into other countries.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter what they do with their entertainment business. It will always just be, it's like a side gig for them. Whereas Disney, you can argue that their parks are what have made the money as much as you want, but their parks are linked to the success of their other IPs. And so if their other IPs are not a success, their parks will eventually die.
And this is always the argument of when Star Wars becomes a brand much more focused on selling toys than making films, without realizing that it's only because the films were popular that the toys were popular to begin with.
Yes.
You do actually need to create an actual IP that causes people to want to go and experience that in practical terms, which Disney isn't doing anymore. But this is a long-term failure of strategy, and it can't be blamed. It can entirely be blamed on Bob Iger. It can't really be blamed on JPEG, because the whole MO seems to have been, we will buy up as many recognizable IPs as possible, and this will produce immense amounts of money for us, because, you know, a sequel to Star Wars, a sequel to Indiana Jones, a sequel to whatever you care to name, everyone knows these franchises. Our long-term future is dependent on us making money off of sequels. And now Bob Iger comes out and says, maybe we made too many sequels. But if you had competent writers, there's no such thing as too many Star Wars sequels. You're talking about Star Wars, not Cars. But apparently, no, we can't even make one Star Wars sequel that's good would be good enough. But he says they've made too many of them now. And they're going to focus on quality over quantity, which is just a tacit, not even very tacit admission that they've been churning out immense amounts of shit. And now they're going to try and make a good film for a change.
Well, he says, there's a quote from him here, actually, where he says, I don't want to apologize for making sequels. Some of them have done extraordinarily well, and they've been good films, too. I think there has to be a reason to make them, though, and you have to have a good story. That's probably what they lacked. And often the story doesn't hold up or is not as strong as the original story. That can be a problem. It's their strategy, right, of buying up IPs and extending them by just making sequels or remakes of originals. It's a short-term win. It's something that allows you to generate quite a lot of hype and quite a lot of interest in the short term, but you burn through the goodwill very, very quickly by doing that. And you can see what they've done with it. It's definitely happened with Star Wars, and now it's kind of getting to that point where Marvel is just referencing itself, and like none of the new stuff that they're trying to launch is working. They're now looking back towards resurrecting old characters and so on. It's all short-term wins to just try and get by. There's no long-term plan there. And the problem that it creates then is that you don't put any effort into creating new stories. There used to be a time when Disney was quite innovative about telling new stories, creating new characters. Their animated movies were awesome stuff. And they don't do that anymore, because none of the stuff that they're coming up with now is resonating with people. And the endless live action remakes are now hitting rocky ground because, you know, look at what's happening with Little Mermaid, and then to a much greater extent, something like Snow White. People are getting sick of that as well.
Yeah, but if I look at any of this,
they've rejected innovation in terms of in favor of imitation. Mm-hmm. And when I saw their last movie, Wish, I was just looking at, and it's the only thing that I suppose you could. I don't know if this is innovative because I don't know a lot about animation, but you've got the 3D characters on a 2D background, which looks awful, by the way. It didn't work. And I don't know if you would call that innovative. Even if it is a failed attempt, at least they tried something different, but it does look bad. But when I was looking at that movie, I just thought, this is just... A lot of people, when I went onto the comments, I was looking at reviews online, and a lot of people had the same comment. This feels and looks like it was created by an AI. That's what Disney are now. There's absolutely no innovation. It's just regurgitation, imitation, sequels, prequels, remakes, and requels, and trying to reuse the same character. It's why Marvel absolutely should not try to revive Iron Man or Black Widow or any of the rest of them. The company has completely lost all ability to innovate. It's terrified of innovation.
The thing is with me is, like, I came to Star Wars via the games mainly. If I think of anything that attracted me to Star Wars, it was mainly via the games, and so that's where all of the emotional resonance came from for me. And if I think of anything which had an impact on me, it was the stories which aligned with my kind of either moral outlook or made me think about things. And you even get to like there was the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the MMO, the bit. The one thing that sticks with me out of everything, it was the secret agent storyline. There was a bit in that where you're asked to make a certain decision, which is incredibly emotionally impactful. Do you take revenge? Do you not? Does this impact you or not? And it all comes down to your values versus the values of the story. And I can't help thinking that, like, all of this could be incredibly simplified by just, like, when people are like, is it a good story? They mean, does this make me feel something? Versus, does this just make me feel nothing? And that comes down to does the values of the writer, do they appeal to something which appeals to you as a person and your moral outlook or not? And that's why I think that so many Hollywood writers cannot physically make a story that appeals to the audience, because their moral outlook is so different to that of the general audience that they physically cannot look at the world from their point of view. And
here's a question for you, Disparu.
Okay.
Do you think that the writers, the people who are making these movies, do they even conceive of a movie as something that can just be a story that does not need to be a platform for moral or political messaging?
No,
does that even occur to them?
I don't think so, because I think that they think it is literally like such a moral good that it has to be done. Like it's not their money on the line, and so they no longer care.
Well, that's definitely the BBC mentality.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I think the BBC would be much better if if there was somebody there that had to put the money on the line for every single episode. Then there would be some kind of I don't know the word exactly. It's not like punishment, but if someone's money is on the line, there's like oversight. I've lost £500,000 on this episode, therefore I will make sure that the next one doesn't make the same mistakes.
Well, speaking of money being on the line, Elon Musk has some thoughts on this. Regarding the use of advertising on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, and a lot of advertisers threatening to pull out of it or just straight up doing it as a way of staging their protest against the fact that it's more pro free speech, I guess. And it's interesting to see his reaction to it. And he was not shy about sharing his thoughts regarding this. And I'm just going to play the clip of it, actually, because it's fantastic. I just want to hear what he has to say.
Tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go fuck yourself.
But
I love how everyone just goes silent there in the audience, like they did not know what to say.
I also like
that.
But
it is never happened that before.
This man is the literal definition of having "fuck you" money. Yes. He can just say that. I just want to see what else he's got.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
No. Fuck yourself.
I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel. Don't advertise.
That guy has no idea how to respond, by the way.
Yeah, it's great.
Like,
you
just let me ask you, hang on, let me formulate that question, because this is not what I was expecting.
Well,
the brain was just short-circuiting there. It's like, this is going against the programming. I don't understand.
It's gone off script.
Yeah. It's not just going against the programming of the interviewer. The DealBook Summit is this meeting of effectively high-level executives and entrepreneurs. So this is a meeting. The audience is all composed of people who are at the absolute tops of the companies who will be making decisions like the ones Elon is referring to there about advertising and all the rest of that. And for a very long time, you've had a clique and a cult of business executives who all share pretty much the same moral values as it comes to the application of global finance to pushing social change. And they have never before been told directly to their faces, because no one has access to them, go fuck yourself if you're going to try and use your money to pressure me to do away with a value like freedom of speech and expression. But most of these people are shocked when they hear that because it's completely new for them. They don't understand it. They only ever speak to each other. That is a networking event where they only ever speak to each other. And now they're being told, someone finally has had the guts to stand up and say, no, actually, you know, everything that you think is good in terms of your corporate responsibility index and your ESG scores and the way that you're absolutely prepared to bow down to the state in imposing free speech restrictions on social media, and to the point of potentially breaching the First Amendment if the most recent stories about YouTube and the Biden administration are true. This is not actually on, and we're not really going to be taking it anymore. You're doing a bad thing, and you think that it's good. Disney, you preach LGBT values. You say that you will campaign against the Parental Rights and Education Act in the same month as you launch Disney Plus in Saudi Arabia. Who the hell are you to be lecturing us on morality?
Yes.
There's something just incredibly cathartic about just hearing those words coming from him. Like, just to all these people, like you say, who are never familiar with being told no, just for this guy to stand up and say, nah, go fuck yourself. I don't care.
That's the only thing.
It's great.
It requires somebody that doesn't care about what they have to offer. And they have been so used to carrying so much that everyone else wants that they can literally do whatever they want and everyone else will be like bow down. And let's be honest, the most stupid thing that has ever happened to the internet is the idea that if an advertiser appears next to something that they agree with it, they've never seen that thing, they never intended to advertise next to the thing, they don't know what they're appearing next to. Even the very idea that you just appearing next to something agrees with it is farcical. But it has been pressured that way by pressure groups who know that it is literally impossible to enforce, and which is why it's been done that way in the first place.
Well, it becomes a form of collective bargaining on the part of advertisers, because if they all work in lockstep to pull their advertising from a company, from a platform, it can cripple it. It can shut it down.
Yeah,
and so it's the ability of them to enforce the ultimate sanction on someone like that who dares to step outside of the approved line. They can say, well, we'll all pull our advertising simultaneously, and there's nothing you can do about it. You will be bankrupt, and you will be humbled, and you will either comply with us or you're done. And suddenly they're confronted with a guy who's got essentially unlimited resources at his disposal, who does have the fuck you money, and who can say, no, fuck you. If you think you can pull this on me, try it. I dare you.
I mean,
it is very well. It's very satisfying to see him call it blackmail, because they wouldn't consider it that. They call it, environmental, social, and governmental justice, and they all have all these nice corporate buzzwords for it, like positive impact and all this nonsense. But it isn't. It's just blackmail. Like ESG is blackmail. If your company does not behave the way that BlackRock believes they should behave, then BlackRock will cut off your line of credit. That is blackmail, plain and simple. And it's beautiful to hear Elon call it out for what it is.
I've seen some people mention that he said something cringe after it, though. Does anyone know about that? Because I haven't seen anything after it. Elon continued to say something after that was not as cool.
I don't remember, because I watched the full clip, and he goes on to say that, in the long run, if they do continue to use the blackmail tactics, then they will destroy Twitter. He does acknowledge, or X, sorry. Yes. He does acknowledge that a continuous pulling of adverts will eventually destroy the company. And I don't know whether or not that was particularly scripted on his part, but nevertheless, as someone said earlier, he does have fuck you money, so does he really care?
He said, he kept using this term of like, tell it to the earth. And I think what he meant to say was like, tell it to like, the general public. Because essentially his gambit was, okay, you could, in theory, all pull your advertising. Twitter would go bankrupt and shut down. But if you do that, we will see to it that they know exactly what you did. They'll know exactly what your thinking was behind it, and they'll know that you're the people that are responsible for destroying this platform.
That was it, because then the interviewer said, so what, do you think that the public will turn against Disney? And Musk says, yes. Do you think they'll boycott Disney? And Musk says, well, they already are. So, that is happening. I don't know. I mean, some of this can be sort of perpetually online discourse. I don't know exactly how much of the public would boycott Disney for an ad block on Twitter, for example. But nevertheless, at least somebody is trying to leverage the public against the corporations that claim to control the public, or at least aim to do so.
My point would always be, like, a lot of the way that I judge the world is essentially by what my dad knows. He is literally just the ultimate normie of everything. Like he's never into any of this specifically, but he hears about stuff through the news and stuff. And if he starts hearing about how Disney movies are all trash and he doesn't want to see them, then that's what I go off. And he has no intention at all of seeing any of this new stuff. He doesn't know about Elon Musk and Twitter. He probably doesn't even know who owns Twitter, but he still doesn't want to see the latest Disney movie of whatever it is. And so I think with any of this thing, it doesn't really matter whether it's like the online sphere only, they're like the tip of the sphere, but it's not. They're not the only people that know any of this stuff. It always has a longer term effect, and this is nothing that companies can turn around on their own, because all of this comes down to, does the average man in the street tell their friends that this was a great movie and you need to see it? If they don't, the movie's going to die.
I think something that's really been hammered home for me over the past couple of years is how monumentally slow and behind the times the mainstream media are when it comes to reporting on declining franchises, problems within studios, and so on. You know, because we've all been in this situation where probably 2-3 years ago we were saying, like, the MCU has got problems. It feels like it's heading in a bad direction creatively. It doesn't seem to have much drive now after Endgame, or before that, even Star Wars. Hey, these sequel movies are really not as good as they're cracked up to be, and kind of feels like they're dealing with crappy characters. They just feel like weak, inferior copies of the original trilogy. And only now are you getting the mainstream media outlets reporting on this and saying, yeah, Marvel is in crisis. Star Wars is a bit of a failure. Like, only now. And you realize, like, they are so slow to react to any of this stuff. They're so slow to admit to any of these problems. And that's their ultimate downfall. Like, people like us were just years ahead of it. Not just us, obviously, but the whole online space. Because you've got people who are not corporate sponsored. They are not dependent on favors and access and all that other useless crap that stops people from actually speaking their true thoughts. We can just say it like it is.
But this is the problem that most mainstream media does have, which is that they are attempting to serve two masters and have been for a very long time. And for as long as it was the case that there wasn't a mass public backlash to whatever it is they were talking about, then they would absolutely prioritize whatever line of spin that the company that grants them access will want them to have. This is why IGN will reliably now give 9 out of 10 to something in 2 weeks' time they'll say was crap, because we're starting to see this separation of the two interests now, because most of the audience that the site actually does rely on for its viewership numbers, and so for its ad impressions, and so for its day-to-day revenue, is not going to be coming anymore for an article which is just shilling a company line. All of a sudden, these institutions are now trying to decide, and most of them are failing to decide, which of the two is more important to them. Is it the access that the company will grant them, or is it the readers that actually bankroll the majority of their organization? And until quite recently, they've been able to do both, and now they can't do that anymore. But you also have in the broader, and this is sort of going back to the X and the Elon Musk thing, and the reason that so many journalists are also shocked when Elon Musk tells advertisers to go fuck themselves, is that there's a much deeper problem with mainstream newspapers in particular, which is that they are now entirely reliant on the corporate side of things, because investigative journalism, which can lose you friends, is expensive, whereas advert placements from big corporations who will sell you advertorials are cheap and profitable even. And so these people don't ever mix with the people of the opposing point of view. It's not in their interest to actually criticize the company line anymore. The mainstream media is in a multiple crises, and that's just 2 of them.
Yeah. Well, there's a complete lack of confidence at this point. I mean, like people have pointed out before, you've got these the social media presence of these various journalistic websites, whether it's video games like IGN and Kotaku and so on, who theoretically have millions of followers on social media, and then when they post things up, they get like 50 likes. So there's no belief in them anymore. There's no engagement whatsoever because no one cares. And like, how is that a sustainable future for them?
Oh, it never was. My favorite article of Kotaku was when I don't think it's their current editor, it was their previous editor, when she came into power. Actually, it's the most honest article I've ever seen online. It was kind of like suicide to like publish, really. But she said that their entire method of being a website was to rely on Google traffic, and we were just going to post controversial stuff. We had an infinite amount of Google traffic to come in, and so we just keep posting it. Google would send us all these visitors, and we didn't need to worry about our audience because Google would just keep sending us new stuff. And then Google traffic ran out, and then our entire website died. And she actually posted about how we're a gaming website, but we're not getting gaming traffic anymore, so we're gonna have to expand past gaming. And it's like, yeah, you have literally, and she never even seemed to consider the fact that you have killed your audience. That's the real problem. It's not that gaming went away, it's that you scared away every single person on the internet that could possibly be interested in gaming. And I think a lot of people did that. They had YouTube or Google traffic, and they didn't need to worry about actually pleasing anyone. And then suddenly it runs out, and they have no idea what to do. Which is
like, particularly with gaming, like the accessibility of just content creators who believe in this stuff and who are so much more passionate about this stuff than the actual journalists who are supposed to be covering it makes it so accessible. Because as a gamer, people are already online. They're already going to be on places like YouTube and stuff and looking for this stuff. So it's so much easier to get this now. It's like they were essentially made obsolete in their own market.
Yeah, but
and they sympathy.
They relied on we can get the reviews a couple of days earlier. We can get access to this game a couple of days earlier, and it's just not enough. But it's not
because like ultimately, if people find creators that they respect and that they listen to, they'll fucking wait. They'll wait for them to play the game and give their opinion because they care what they have to say and they respect that. They don't respect any of these outlets now because they know how fake they are. I can't imagine anyone like going to somewhere like Kotaku or Polygon because they want to know what the real deal is with the latest game that came out. They know they're not going to get that. It's corporate approved trash.
I don't know which outlet it was. It might have been Kotaku, but when the Hogwarts Legacy game came out, and I think the first major piece of coverage was this long essay from one of the staff writers saying, I felt I really had to address this question as a trans person and as a person of color. I think Hogwarts Legacy is really damaging to my community. I'm looking at that, and it's a really, really long article as well. And I'm thinking, well, what are you? Are you supposed to be a games news outlet, or are you supposed to be just a carbon copy of every other think piece that's written in anywhere? Because that's not about gaming anymore. That's again about current real world political issues using games as a launch pad to discuss it. No one's interested
same
in
about that ridiculous article about like the latest Tomb Raider game where it's like, well, you know, I have to try and grapple with the post-colonial legacy of Lara Croft stealing indigenous artifacts. Who the fuck is going to care even remotely about any of that crap?
Me, Drinker. That's all I think about when I play Tomb Raider.
The first Kotaku article I came up with Hogwarts Legacy was 15 hours with Hogwarts Legacy. The discourse around the Harry Potter game encompassed J.K. Rowling's rancid politics and the role of criticism itself. So at no point were they criticizing the game, what was in its mechanics. It was all about what is our job with regards to this game and what should we tell people.
I've got a question I have to ask. This is a request for someone's birthday tomorrow, and it's directed at you, MauLer. I'd like to ask MauLer to give me his favorite pun from Batman and Robin in Arnie's voice for my birthday tomorrow.
What's my favorite one? I love all of them. It's hard to pick. And then I worry if I pick one that's too
killing
small.
the dinosaurs, perhaps.
Try you're not sending me back to the cooler.
Oh, fuck it. I'll just do both. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. And oh, wait, what was what you said? Sorry?
You're not
putting me in the cooler.
You're not sending me to the cooler.
There you go.
Also, happy birthday. Or whatever.
Anyway, I hope you have an awesome birthday tomorrow, man. In all seriousness, I'd also like to ask why Mr. Robot isn't talked about with the other greats like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. I don't think enough of us have seen.
I haven't seen Mr. Robot.
I've seen a lot of Mr. Robot. It depends what you're talking to specifically. I know more at the start than the end.
Is that because you watched the start but not the end?
Well, no, I did watch the everything got a bit repetitive, and it relied around the same tactic of like an unreliable narrator. that everything that happened, it was lying to you, and so it came a bit predictable. I felt like the first series was the strongest because you didn't know what was coming.
Yeah, fair play. Someone in chat was asking as well, like, why does it matter if Elon Musk was telling off Disney? Drinker does it all the time. Yeah, the difference is that, like, no one cares what I say about it, but, like, someone like Elon Musk is one of the most famous people on the planet. So clearly, if he does it, yeah, it's a big deal.
Put $44 billion behind it. I'll care the same amount.
It's
so
annoying, though,
basically,
that you can
Elon,
spend 3
give me
years
50 billion.
telling
I'll
Disney to go fuck themselves, and Elon Musk just has to say it once, and everyone pays attention. I guess it's the world we live in.
Well,
yeah.
It is.
Well, my favorite bit was when there's like, yeah, but what do you mean? He was like giving him an out. It's like you can reverse all of this if you just say. He's like, no, go fuck yourself. Just so it's everybody knows what's happening.
It's kind of like that moment in Alan Partridge where it's like, is there anything I can do to undo this? No. It's like, oh, fuck it.
The great thing as well is that Linda Yaccarino is her name, I think it is, who now runs the corporate side of X, was in the audience as he was saying it. And I just wish I'd hand over to her face.
Her only job is to win advertisers to his side. And she's like, oh no.
The thing is, there's going to be a lot of companies that like are smaller, not necessarily don't have the billions of dollars to throw around like Disney does, but they will so get on board with this, that spirit of like rebellion and just sticking it to the system. There's so many of these smaller companies that will now buy into Twitter advertising and probably get it at rock bottom prices as well.
Yes. Well, that is the thing with any free market thing. Obviously, the less demand, the cheaper it is. And so if you want to advertise to a load of people, like every single person on Twitter is still worth the same today as they were yesterday. But now you can get them way cheaper. And so it self-balances out all that kind of stuff. And this is one of the issues with the whole YouTube apocalypse and all that kind of stuff, the advertisement apocalypse. It was a load of people. The companies would leave, and then they would slowly sneak back in over the next few months and just get all the same advertisement they would have got previously cheaper. Like, it was literally basically a scam to get their own views cheaper than they were before. So I literally think the main thing that needs to die on the internet is the idea that advertisers are linked or in any way endorse what they're advertised next to. It doesn't make any sense when you think about it.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I get adverts for like Marvel and Disney products on my videos. Like,
yeah, I kept getting told Rings of Power was advertised alongside my videos at the time.
That's hilarious.
I did an anti-Gillette sort of a video where I advertised Gillette's anti-meal ad. And apparently a lot of people in the comments were writing, I keep getting Gillette ads while watching this.
Yeah, because it's keyword based, so it makes sense.
Yeah, we made fun of BetterHelp for like a half hour, one of the newest EFAPs, and people were like, there's BetterHelp ads all over the EFAP.
I looked at it, was the first one, it was right underneath the video. So well done for the ad associations there.
It's such a waste of money. But like, all right, go ahead.
I like this one here. Cheers, drinker panel. This is set out for Musk, honestly. I'd say imagine if someone with that kind of cash was in the entertainment industry and could tell off all these agenda-pushing idiots. But for now, we can settle for South Park. That is true. I honestly don't know what's stopping him from just buying up a Hollywood studio and starting to make movies. That's the thing he should get into next.
He wouldn't even. I mean, he could do that with the Daily Wire. He could invest a huge amount of money over there, get some stock from them, and make major moves.
I think they're doing their own thing, and that work. I think you'd need a separate thing. The issue with Musk is, as you've seen with Twitter, and his choice of CEO. I think when you buy this stuff, there's still you want to invest in the mainstream, and so you still go that kind of course. What this takes is somebody who completely understands that. It isn't the business model that's broken. It is the people involved. And so you have to go with an essentially opposite moral paradigm of the people that are there within the company. And until people grasp that, I don't think you can fix it.
I mean, it'll have to fix itself ultimately, or the system's going to just run out of revenue because no one's buying it.
I think that's the solution. I think that's what's going to happen. Because I don't think Disney or anyone is turning around. There's no way they're going to fire most of their company and hire people who have the exact opposite moral point of view. It's too far.
Do you think it's going to get so bad for Disney that they're eventually going to have to, possibly in several years' time, declare bankruptcy and start selling off their assets to pay their debts? So I mean,
I don't know with Disney because they have parks and stuff, and so these companies are so massive. They have such massive revenue.
Yeah, I know like
from a variety of places.
60-70% comes from their parks, but Disney are in a ton of debt, and
I
none of their studios
wonder-
are working. All 4 of their major studios are failing and are money
Yeah,
sinks.
but I think they would always considered to be separate business entities. So it might be that they could spin off, or they could bankrupt Lucasfilm, for example, or they could bankrupt Marvel, or just like withdraw from the filmmaking business altogether for a while, but like keep the parks and all the other stuff that they do. There's always like options, so that thing like a business of that size is always going to be segmented, so you can retain the profitable stuff and ditch the stuff that isn't working for you anymore. And yeah, I could see them scaling back. I mean, from what Iger said, that's exactly what they're going to do anyway. He says they're going to focus on quality over quantity.
But
Well,
I don't
you're
think
gonna
they
see
know
a
what
lot.
quality is. Like,
No, they don't. No, it
quality
sounds
relies
nice.
to morality, and they just have no idea. Like,
It's probably code for we know there's too much political garbage in our films now, and we need to get rid of that, but we can't say it because that would kill our ESG score or whatever, or make people mad at us on Twitter.
that's actually my worst nightmare. I've said this for a while. Russell T Davis came out with the same kind of thing. It's like we'll have to keep trying stuff and testing to see what works and what doesn't. But if they come up with a sort of half and half where it's like, yeah, we've got a load of indoctrination, but also there's enough good content that people will kind of go, I'll accept it, and we'll just kind of go on from there. That's my hell. If people are like, yeah, I'll accept the indoctrination for something that's good enough, but isn't quite in my face enough.
Take the indoctrination. I'm curious about this one from Ian So Forth. Linda Yaccarino is now the Jim Halpert from The Office. Is this the Office reboot that they're talking about? Wow. There's going to be female-led?
I don't know The Office. That's my problem.
I mean, this was an announcement that was doing the rounds a few months back, actually, that they were going to do a reboot of The Office for like the 3rd time now, I think. And this one was going to be female-centric. I don't know why you would do it. You had the British one.
Mindy Kaling to be showrunner. She'd be great.
Might as well, yeah. She's too busy with Velma, the massive success that was.
Oh, hopefully. I'm looking forward to
Remember, all of you guys' videos is what made that happen.
I will take credit for it if that's what it needs. I'll take all the credit for the season 2 of Velma.
I'm pretty sure they confirmed season 2 before my first video went out. Yeah, apparently, I'm still responsible
because they knew you were making the video. They were like, "Oh shit, he's making one season 2."
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Has season 2 of She-Hulk now been canned?
Well, I don't look. In 2 days, I heard it's been renewed and it's been cancelled, and so I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, I don't trust anybody on it anymore.
At this point, I'm just a paranoid guy. Like, please stop teasing me.
Yeah.
I even saw yesterday that they're going to do Kang Dynasty now, having previously announced. Like, you can't trust the rumor mill.
Yeah. Until Disney come out and go, this is what's happening, I don't trust anybody.
It's that whole thing is like Schrodinger's movie. It's all going to depend on whether or not Jonathan Majors gets sent to prison.
It really is. And I think no matter what at this point, even if he's found completely innocent, that he'll have a reduced role just because they're like...
I will get sent to prison if it means we get a She-Hulk season 2. It's like if I need to be.
I appreciate your...
I was thinking there... I was thinking there for a moment about actors in reduced roles, and I watched when I went to see Napoleon yesterday. There was a trailer for Aquaman 2, and I kid you not, Amber Heard was in it for approximately 0.6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That was all she got, and I would have assumed that she would have been a major character in that film. Barely mentioned in the trailer.
Well,
I mean. There was another one here. A clarification, apparently. I meant the Twitter CEO as an office name as Elon dropped his F-bombs.
Meme.
Okay.
I don't know the office well enough. That's my problem. I hate
Linda Yaccarino is the CEO of Twitter, so it would be unusual for her to take the step down of joining the office, but it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. We can
make this work.
I think you meant in the general paradigm of the office. You had like the Twitter CEO and then one of her underlings going on national television.
I'm glad he's only paid $100 to try and get across
the meme. I mean.
Yeah, sorry, man. No, I'm still not getting it, Ian. You're going to have to clarify again, man.
Few hundred more.
I despise the American office.
No, I get what you're saying. It's always like Jim who has that like raised eyebrow reaction to like whatever Michael Scott's doing, like whatever insanity.
Yeah, and like looks over at the camera. He does that a lot.
Yeah. So no, that makes sense. So apologies, you had to spend so much money just to get your point across. How about we do some super chats though and see where we end up with this? How does that sound?
It sounds
We
like
started with them so very well.
I'm always thinking, like, should I just say no?
Yeah, no, okay, we're not doing it then. That's it. We're ending the stream. We're done because MauLer said so. All right, I'll do a few. LC Le Pen says, Game Awards are coming up, but since I'm sure people only care about who crashes the stage this time, what are the open bar's best and worst games of 2023?
Well, the worst is
Game 3
obvious.
for best.
Yeah, I'll submit Gollum and King Kong for worst. And Alan Wake 2, fuck that game.
I mean, if the finals will actually release this year, I'd still submit the finals for the best. The finals is my favorite FPS in years. But it's only been in betas. It's supposed to release this year.
I've got RoboCop Rogue City ready to go. I just haven't had a chance to play it yet. Because
I'm the same. I've got it, but I haven't played it.
Get going, Drinker.
I'll get it there. Yeah, I love this as well. So did this joke land?
Nobody knows them. Nobody knows the people.
Yeah, honestly, please stop spending all your money on this. Like, I'm worried you're going to bankrupt yourself.
Say yes. Yes, it landed. We all thought it was.
Honestly, you absolutely killed it, mate. Best joke we've had on Open Bar ever. Thank you. Taker610 says, when Russell T. Davies says that there's a long history of associating evil with disability, is he referring to Austin Powers? In Austin Powers 3, Dr. Evil does use a powered wheelchair.
He does.
I thought he was referring to himself. Like, he literally said, I have a problem with this, and so did a lot of people in my office.
I thought because Russell T. Davies is evil and disabled.
Ever since I watched Doctor Who with Davros back in the classic episodes, I just couldn't look at a disabled person without thinking you're fucking evil and tried to kill them. So
I don't know.
It's always like, we're saying a lot more than we'd intended to.
I do remember reading somewhere that the first Bond villain, Dr. No, because he has artificial hands, I think it might have been The Guardian or some book that I read, some James Bond book. And the notion behind it was that this was very problematic because it depicted disabled people as evil. So this is not this Russell T. Davies nonsense. It's nothing new. I've seen it before, and specifically in reference to Dr. No, the first Bond villain, the first one depicted on screen.
It was always the irony of that position, which is that, you had anti-racist activists saying that orcs in World of Warcraft and Lord of the Rings were racist because they are representations of black people. And no non-racist person would ever have said that, but the anti-racists did. Feminists said that, all Scarlett Johansson was as Natasha Romanoff was tits. And saying, well, no, she was a good character, but, you're the feminist, so I guess I defer to you. All these people who profess to be on the side of the people they're talking for are the ones who have the most reductive view of the characters they're talking about.
Absolutely.
They view them only as their immutable characteristics and nothing else.
There's been lots of discriminatory, racist bigots throughout history, and they're all surfacing now, is what I'm saying. Literally, like, they've all surfaced now in Doctor Who.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that part of the quote that Elon gave earlier. I know it wasn't in that clip that I showed, but it was basically, like so much of what people do now is evil disguised as good, or they want to be seen to be good. It's just performative crap, but ultimately they're still serving their own evil, selfish ends.
I think,
and it's true.
What sucks too is like, even because like, some of the examples you're coming up with, like the Lord of the Rings orcs ones, it's just like, that's fucking patently absurd. But with the ones that, let's say like, let's say there was a patent notice and you got quotes from the 80s and back that whenever there was a gay character in a TV show or a movie, that the execs were like, can you please kill this character off as soon as possible? Because like audiences don't like seeing gay. Let's say that was true, and it did cause a trend of a lot of gay characters dying, and that's what created the bury a gays trope. It's like, so what's the solution? It's like, well, now we give all gay characters hyper plot armor to overcompensate and overcorrect. And it's like, no, you just stop killing them because you're told to. That's all.
Did you ever see a point where the pendulum sort of settles? And so, like, you haven't like hyper swung in one direction and you haven't overcompensated in the other. It just kind of reaches a point where it's like, okay, we've got a sensible middle ground now where we write good characters again.
Your issue is the pendulum was never on one side to begin with. The pendulum was literally used as a weapon to try and gain power over other people. And so it was claimed that it was on one side, but it never was. They just intended it to be this way. Salt said to everyone, we're so oppressed. And then eventually said, so now we can never be killed in any scenario, in any TV show ever again. It's not that anyone was ever specifically targeted, just we claimed it was all along. This is the same way with everything. Like the entire, all of the argumentation relies on the fact that you assume that everyone is honest actors to begin with, rather than just actively out to benefit themselves. And if there's one thing I've learned from watching all the Hollywood actors, they only ever support positions which benefit themselves. Every single time anyone goes, I think we need more of this actor, just happens to be them which they're talking about, which needs more roles. I've never seen anyone support other people.
Wasn't that the actress that played Darben in the Marvels saying like this movie's fantastic, but because it opens up diverse roles for people like me?
Yes.
And so
every single time
it directly benefits me, so that makes it good.
Every single time it opens up more roles for people like me in whatever category it happens to be.
There's actually a whole section in my Marvels video on exactly this point, because one of the first interviews that came out once the publicity was allowed to start happening was I can't remember the names of the actresses for Ms. Marvel and Rambo. They went on The View. And one of the defenses that you occasionally hear of the Marvels is it's only failed because the actors weren't allowed to promote it. To which my counter is no, because we already know exactly what they're going to say when they do promote it. So it can't make a huge amount of difference. When the actors go on The View and one of them says, oh, it was really important to me that I could wear my natural hairstyle because it's really important to me that people who look like me can wear my hairstyle on a film. And I'm thinking, sitting there thinking, what about this is selling your movie to an audience? This is not about the audience. This is not about you representing people. This is about you trying to uplift yourself because you are a narcissist. And this is the primary, well, not the primary, it's one of the primary reasons these films do not do well at the box office, because they've become entirely self-referential vehicles for the actor's ego.
Well, I could even get behind the argument that it was, oh, well, it just represents me and I represent a greater majority of the audience. But if that's the case, then you should represent a greater majority of the audience. Whereas in this case, I represent a tiny fraction of the audience, and that's why I'm important. It's like, well, no, even by your own logic, if that's the case, you should represent the majority of the audience. And that's exactly the opposite of what's happening. So it's not even logically consistent within their own worldview. And I've always had a thing in my life where if something isn't logically consistent, somebody is lying to you. Like every single thing should make sense. Otherwise, somebody is taking the piss.
Ultimately, it comes down to like the business perspective as well. Like if you're a business, you want to cater to the maximum number of customers possible to attract the most business. And so if your business model specifically is all about targeting the smallest percentage of your potential audience and just saying, well, everyone else can just fucking deal with it. Well, okay, you can't act surprised if you go out of business then, because nobody's interested in buying your product. Hence the reason Disney's lost $750 million this year alone. You know, one thing follows naturally on from the other.
School of thought as fuck around and find out. So yeah.
Yep. Wait, I've got it. This will save everything. Taylor Swift buys Star Wars after the IP is sold off and turns it into a musical. And Elon Musk buys Disney in total and makes a live-action remake of Song of the South. Although by save, I mean burn it down. I mean, yeah, that would be fine, I suppose.
I mean, I genuinely think the only thing stopping these things being a success is the people involved. Like the IPs and everything is still fine. It is literally the staff that are making it, which is the problem.
Well, if a really great Star Wars movie came out, say, next year, like just an awesome movie, do you think it would be a big success, or do you think the brand is too dead?
I think it might take two. Like, I think
2 or 3, I would say.
Yeah. But I think word of mouth would help it.
If a great Star Wars film came out, our communities would be split. There would be people who would be like, "It's done. I'm not fucking watching that shit."
I agree.
And then there'd be people would be like, "No, seriously, you need to give it a chance."
I mean, that was a big problem with Andor. Like, Andor came out, and it is really good. And
I don't think Andor.
Well, I mean,
Andor isn't good enough.
It takes some getting into. Like the prison arc in particular is excellent.
I mean, I gave it 4 episodes. I mean, how much do you want?
Yeah, like that was the same mistake I made. I watched the first 4 and didn't like it, but then I gave the rest of it a chance, and it really does get better. And I do agree that the first 4 episodes are a bit too slowly paced, but
I liked 3.
It's really good. Like
it was like 25%. It wasn't enough for me.
You Disparu, you're that meme of the miner who stops right at the gold. Give it up.
No, but I think 4 hours of content is enough to give a series.
No one's calling you unreasonable, but we're telling you there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, the prison arc is incredible. The prison arc's the best thing Disney Lucasfilm have ever done.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny to see Andy Serkis nailing it, like with a good script and excellent acting. When his Snoke was such a fucking waste.
Yeah.
So,
that's it. I would swap Andor in a heartbeat for a Star Wars movie that was as well written as Andor. Because Andor was never going to save Star Wars. Disney Plus shows will never save Star Wars. Only the cinema can actually save Star Wars. But Andor's approach to writing quality and fidelity of character, yes, you can have a bit more action if you want to in a movie. That would probably go a long way toward restoring the franchise. It's a thing to learn from. But if you take anyone who praises Andor to say that Andor itself will save the franchise, then you've heard something that we haven't said.
There's a lot of interesting things with regards to like YouTube videos as well. The fact that when you watch a YouTube video, there's a whole load of videos in the right panel that you can click off to. And that means that every single second that you do in a YouTube video has to be entertaining enough that people don't leave. Whereas when you've got someone in the cinema, they're only watching your thing and they can't leave. And so you can then take your time and lead into it a bit more. And this is the
thing as well.
Different customer behavior.
If Andor season 2 is as good as season 1, it won't matter because it'll be over. And then I don't even know what Gilroy will be doing in relation to Star Wars, if he's going to be attached to it at all. And then at that point, there's nothing. There's no, you watched Andor, so now you watch something. It's like, no, that's just it. It's an island. It's like, oh, well.
I don't think Andor season 2 is going to make a big dent in anything, personally.
That's what I'm saying, though. It wouldn't even matter if it did. It would be. It doesn't lead to anything other than stories that have been told. So,
yeah.
The next one is from Robo96, who says, I'm interested to see what most disabled and trans people think of how Daily Wire represents them, because all it seems to do is feed into the stigma that they're constantly victimized in special cases who are different to everyone else. Well, I think
you're gonna review Lady Ballers.
I think what they were saying, because DW, it was probably Doctor Who there. Sorry, I'll retract that one. It's not.
You thought Daily Wire. That's why that was confusing.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting between the two. It was literally, to me, the director going, I've always associated disability with evil, which is why I kept putting it in my videos. He's like, no, this is a common thing for everyone else. It's like, no, this is just you. And so it was like, me and all of my people at the BBC have always associated disability with evil. I'm like, this is something that needs to be repeated so everyone knows how horrific you are as a person.
It's the same if they're dealing with any minority, whether it's, trans people, gay people, whatever, and their attitude is like, well, on behalf of straight white people of the middle class, I am offended on your behalf. It's just
no, but I celebrate that. I've moved past. Oh no, you only represent yourself too. No, you're horrific. If you think that, you should be fired and never seen from again in all of polite company. I am more than willing to engage in just collectivization in that regard. If you think this, you and your entire department can go off and we can actually hire new people that actually somehow reflect the morality of the audience.
You wonder how many of them are very weak-willed when it comes to morality, and that would they believe the complete opposite if enough people around them did?
Well, in which case, you should hire enough of them that the actual strength of will, if you really want people that actually are like, I need to stand up for my job, then you need to create an entire culture within an industry of people which will say what they think because they want to save their own jobs. Because otherwise, you're going out the door.
Yeah, and you're right, more like these people, they would switch their minds in a heartbeat and swing to the other side of the political spectrum. If, for example, tomorrow the regime decided that the current thing was extreme far right, they would all agree with it. I have no doubt.
I don't think that disabled people are not evil is a particularly right-wing position.
Depends who you talk
Well, you're wrong. All right.
I mean, it isn't going to Russell T. Davis, but for anyone else. Like, maybe disabled people are evil.
We're in such a clown world. It's not even like left and right anymore. It's like fucking crazy.
Well, it would be very left-wing, so,
It would, but no, people respond to incentive structures all the time. So people will switch on a dime if that's what their social network and their social group tells them is right. There's all kinds of, if you want to be black-pilled about humanity, the Asch conformity experiment is a really, really good one. You sit one person down in a room with five other people, with a number of lines on the screen, one of which is obviously shorter than the other one. You repeat the test multiple times, and the guy says, no, the shortest one is the shortest. Everyone else deliberately lies. And within about an hour, he has switched to go along with the conformist herd. And he's denying the evidence of his own eyes. The same thing happens, 2 weeks ago. All the people who will go out and say, we absolutely support women and gay rights. Oh, by the way, Osama bin Laden was kind of right in his diagnosis of America, guys. Like, that is not about people believing in morality or immorality. That is about people being entirely conformist to their social setting with an incentive structure that determines their behavior. You need to switch the incentive structure in studios to make it less profitable to push random political positions and more profitable to make profitable movies again. And then you might see some sort of change.
And you also have to instill in these people that your morality should be the morality of the audience, not you trying to convince the audience that they have to conform to you because you have no power, because you're a random person in a random Californian state and nobody cares about you. Look, what has happened
is that just the echo chamber mentality, though, of their belief that, well, because I'm surrounded by people who all tell me the same thing, the rest of the country must also feel the same way, because of course they do. And anyone who disagrees is just some crazy outlier that we have to deal with.
Yeah, but the balance to that was people like Ricky Gervais at the award ceremonies when he was like, nobody cares about any of you. Don't you understand? We just want you to get your award and piss off. And what did they do? They fired him and they got someone else that would just tell them whatever they wanted to hear. And so it is 100%. They are wrapped up in their own. They never hear a contradictory opinion, and the exact opposite needs to be true. They need to be completely utterly surrounded by their audience and faced with the consequences of if you actually disrespect the audience, it will negatively impact any money you make for any of your movies. And the only way you can do that is tie their wages to the success of the movies.
Not going to get that with the BBC, that's for sure. Don Blackbird says, welcome back, Drinker. Did you like the final round of the Red Bull World Championship? Put me to sleep. What teams and drivers do you support in F1? Cheers. I think everyone knew that Verstappen was going to win that one. It's like, it actually wasn't a particularly eventful race, but I was just happy to be there because we were sitting in the sun in Abu Dhabi with quite a few beers at our disposal, and it was all good, man. And we watched some very fast cars go zoom zoom, so I enjoyed it.
Yay!
I always had a stuff. Was that sorry?
Your hotel looked gorgeous when you posted that picture of like the beach.
Oh, it was great.
Everyone was like, "Wish I was there."
To go from Scotland in late November, where it's fucking freezing, to that, it was just beautiful. It was exactly what we needed. But I always liked Nico Hülkenberg. I always had a soft spot for him. He felt like the star that never quite got to shine. I never quite got that podium place, and I've always hoped to see him do it, but wasn't to be this time. So never mind. It's interesting watching Hamilton as well. They cannot get his fucking car sorted. It's like potentially, you've got a great driver with a great track record. You've got theoretically an amazing team with an amazing car, but like they can't get the two to match up. It's so weird. Apparently he was just desperate to bin it at the end of this season. He's probably going to burn it or something. But yeah. Anyway, I'll stop prattling.
That'd make a great YouTube video.
Yeah, just destroying a $1 million F1 car.
Yes.
Robo96 also says, about Elon Musk, I'm sure some people will love that he's sticking a middle finger up at Disney, but could his attitude be seen as a reckless business move that would just deter potential advertisers and investors? Yeah. I mean, he's the ultimate chaotic neutral, I suppose, but that's kind of how he does things.
Do you have enough money to care is the answer to that. It is.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm assuming everyone here, if Twitter was to die, would not be that upset.
I get over it. Twitter's subscription model is actually going. I mean, has it become profitable yet after Elon's taken over?
I would really miss that $4 a month that I get in revenue from Twitter. I don't know how I'd get by without that. Kevin O'Neill says, evening, gents. So I saw -1 last night. Oh, that's the Godzilla movie. And while I would certainly recommend it, the mantle of best Godzilla movie still firmly rests in the hands of 1954's Gojira, in my opinion. A high bar to beat, but to be fair.
Wow, not the Roland Emmerich one? Okay.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I love how everyone was shooting at this monster the size of a skyscraper and no one could actually hit it. It's just uncanny.
It's a difficult shot.
Mr. Taco Boutique says, it seems Elon forgot what free market capitalism is. I don't think he has. That's the thing. Like, he just doesn't care.
I'm not really sure that a cartel, which is effectively what the advertisers are trying to form, is free market capitalism, but that's a basic definitional dispute.
Mr. Luca says, hey, Drinker, MauLer, and Platoon, just wanted to say thanks for all your work during these years when I was struggling with my mum. She died two weeks ago. Oh, I'm sorry, mate.
Sorry to
hear it, man.
But yeah, hopefully we could, I don't know, hopefully provide you with a few little laughs or a little bit of entertainment along the way. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. JS Pena says, hope Matt Smith doesn't appear in upcoming specials. Yeah, I think he's moved on
busy
to
with
better
House
things.
of the Dragon, so
yeah.
I mean, Tennant for me was the worst one to have back in the first place. So
he was my favorite.
I care more about Tennant than Smith.
Cirrhosis of Liver says, hey, Critical Drinker, what are the panel's favorite actresses in terms of stellar acting ability, past or present, and which movies best exemplify those talents?
I don't know about acting ability, but mine would be Kate Beckinsale in Underworld.
I know your reasoning for this one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
One of the shots is in the trailer, so
you love the plot of those films.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
She was very good in Van Helsing as well for similar reasons.
True.
I always like Jessica Biel in Blade Trinity in an otherwise shit movie. My God, she was.
Oh wait,
stacked.
we're just talking about hot women now.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Disparu took me down this road, so I'm going to finish it.
Don't blame me.
I mean, okay, MauLer, fine. Let's be boring and talk about acting ability.
It's like Disparu's the bigot. He led me down this one.
Yeah, I really I'll give her this one, right? I really like Anya Taylor-Joy. I think she's a fantastic actress. She's very interesting. She's willing to take on more interesting and challenging roles, and I think I've never been disappointed with the performances that she's put in. And I hate the rumors that she's apparently going to be in the MCU.
One of my favorite all-time female performances was Kathy Bates in Misery. I think that's an amazing performance.
That was good. She was
Olivia Colman in a lot of what she's been doing recently, be it some of the clips I've seen from The Crown or what she did in The Father, or just any role that she's having to take. It's really cool to see someone who I only knew from comedy stuff, like in that Mitchell and Webb look and stuff.
That's what I was going to say. Don't you think that she plays the same character in everything?
Olivia Colman.
Yeah.
If you're talking about like upper class British lady, but like to be fair,
have you seen Hot Fuzz? Disparu.
Yeah, Hot Fuzz, Peep Show, and The Crown are three quite different properties. I'd have said.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There are very big differences anyway.
I was thinking like the things I mainly know her from is like Peep Show and was it Secret Invasion?
Again, like, Peep Show would be very different. Have you seen any of the things people have referenced in yet?
I've not seen The Crown.
I've seen The Crown or The Father, The Favorite.
I've seen Hot Fuzz a long time ago.
Yeah, but if you've seen Hot Fuzz and Peep Show, she's completely different in those two.
Well, the main things that I like can reference recently would have been Secret Invasion and Peep Show, and she's kind of the same in that.
Good God, what are you talking about? How is she the same in Peep Show and Secret Invasion?
Yes.
No,
it's a tape.
In Peep Show, she's like a normal woman who's just getting along with her day in the office, sort of thing. In Secret Invasion, she's like a psychopathic British officer.
In Peep Show, I could 100% see her just like assassinating the person next to her, just be like, "Yeah, I don't care about you. Bye."
I have no idea how to respond to that. My submission for super hot lady, I guess. We're gonna do that too, right? Like, come on,
do it.
Oh my God, there's so many selections you can make. I'll go with Jennifer Connelly, even though that should have been Drinker's suggestion, to be honest with you.
I mean, she is pretty hot, yeah. She
In
still is,
everything.
actually.
Hey, that's still the way we're
is.
I was still date her now.
Her and Selma Hayek, like, god damn. Some women just age like fine wine. It's glorious. Anyway, I'm going to get sidetracked with that one. I'll wait until after the stream to deal with that situation. JK Fozel says, have you guys seen the Lady Ballers trailer? I get serious Ringer vibes from it. Hopefully it's at least funny, if not a good movie. Well, they're certainly stirring up the hornet's nest with that movie.
It's whether or not they have more than one joke, I think, will be the tell. Because I understand why they're doing it, and yes, it's absolutely right that someone finally starts to make fun of the sheer insanity that is men and women's sport. That's fine. But for a comedy movie, you do need more than just that joke. And I kind of suspect there's not going to be much more than that. But, you know, open-minded, I will watch it when it comes out.
Cirrhosis of Liver says, hello, Disparu. Which show do you think was the better comedy, Robin Hood or Robin Hood Men in Tights? Also, tell the panel about the bunny rabbit scene.
I think Robin Hood was easily the better comedy, even though it was unintentional, because that is the most deranged thing I've ever seen in my life, except for possibly the next Robin Hood thing that I want to review over Christmas, which I found while trying to find Robin Hood. So, look, imagine you're just watching a Robin Hood show, and it's like, it's not the actual Robin Hood, but it's based around sort of a lot of people, they live in a block of flats, and for some reason they decided to rob everyone else because they're too lazy and can't be bothered to go to work. And they just think that everyone else owes them a living, and then they get arrested. And rather than going to prison or jail, instead a rabbit walks into their room and starts to electrocute them with a cattle prod for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And the only reason the show ever gives for this is if you told anybody that a pink rabbit electrocuted with a cattle prod, the judge wouldn't believe you. And that is Robin Hood. And they escaped this hell, and they never got rearrested by the police. They just let them off for no reason. They're like, oh, you've escaped from prison, but that's fine. You know, we're going to forget about that and just let you carry on with your life of crime. Because for some reason, a pink rabbit electrocuted you.
It reminds me of the end of Indiana Jones 5.
Yeah, they actually escaped by sticking tampons in a guard's mouth. I mean, I don't know. I don't make the rules. This is just what happened in the show. This is essentially Robin Hood morphed from a very strange television show to what I can only assume was a very weird fantasy by certain creators.
Fair play. I don't even know what to say to respond to that.
I don't think there is anything. It's a very weird Canadian TV show.
Master of Puppets says, Hail Drinker, why do you think TV seasons are so short now? Is it A, short attention spans, B, writers can't write more than one or two decent sentences, or C, stupidly high budgets? Also, as a Kiwi, sorry for Taika Waititi. Yeah, we don't forgive you for him. But as for TV shows these days, I think partly high budgets. That's definitely a big aspect of it. Yeah, it's really difficult to stretch that out over 22 episodes like you used to get. And also the streaming model kind of does away with this idea of really long seasons because people get bored and they just want to move on to the next thing. So yeah, 10 seems to be the optimum. You get the ones that are 8 episodes. So yeah, I guess those are the two main reasons as far as I understand it. I don't know if the panel has got anything else.
Got an impression that the prestige television, like at one point when it first started happening, you know, like Band of Brothers, it was like, oh, this is special. This is something that's high budget and very, very specifically crafted, and it is as long as it needed to be, not as long as is mandated for television shows. You're like, oh shit, okay, this is serious. And that's how I felt they were trying to package a lot of the Disney ones or the Marvel ones, whatever. This sort of like, this is a TV show, but of a new era. And it was like, that's true. It is a very new era. Like they're shockingly bad. And they've only recently come to learn that they need a showrunner on their TV shows, which is fucking embarrassing.
I agree with this one as well. It's not episodic TV anymore. It's big overarching plot. You know, plots.
Yeah, it's like the serialization, right? Like,
was it Twin Peaks? Was Twin Peaks the first show to do that, where instead of just episodic start, middle, and end of a new episode every week with its own little story, they had a big story arc going throughout?
No, you probably had things like The Prisoner from back in like the 60s or 70s. Like
it was a gradual change because a lot of different shows were experimenting with it. Like even Buffy was doing story arcs that were sometimes over several episodes instead of just resetting on the formula. I know that House, like the first 3 seasons are all formulaic, and then they start trying to shake it up because you start to get like stale and stuff. And yeah, there's a whole mixture. But Twin Peaks was definitely a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I know one thing that Twin Peaks definitely changed is it got rid of that whole victim of the week culture whereby there'd be a detective show and somebody would die,
Yeah.
and then everything would wrap up by the end. They decide, well, let's just have one major victim and make her the focal point of the story.
Well, one of the
which is brilliant.
best representations of that, I would say, is a Supernatural, where you can watch, I think it was season 1, you can like watch episode 1, and then 1 in the middle, and then the end, and you've caught all of the major story. The rest of it is Monster of the Week, where the boys take
the X-Files did something similar, but in terms of like pure serialization, weren't most of the really old, like the original Doctor Who's multi-episode serialized storytelling as opposed to Monster of the Week?
It was a mixture. Like I think
not on the
I don't
new
know if
stuff.
Genesis of the Daleks was the first one to do that, but it was definitely an early one, and that was when it was just a whole season devoted to one overarching story. So yeah, it was definitely being done back then.
But I think it comes from the attitude that movies are superior to television. And I actually think, because I went off movies way before most people did, and thought that TV was better. And I think that TV went downhill when the budgets became so big that movie people got interested in them. And they just don't have the attention span or the intelligence or the skill to make a TV plot. They can't make one that goes as long as other stuff does. But because movies were seen as this prestigious thing, we can get movie actors in and everything, they dragged down television to the level of movies. And so now they physically can't make a series which lasts 22 episodes and be entertaining. They can only make 10 or 6 or 4 because their ideas they're not deep enough to last longer.
And you still like movies though, right?
Some, but very rarely. Like I may like 2 or 3 movies a year overall.
Do you watch indie movies also?
I don't blame you for that.
Disparu, do you watch indie movies or just Hollywood stuff?
No, I gave up on movies a long time ago. I'm on about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I stopped watching movies largely and just started watching TV series. It's why most of my channel is more TV series than movies.
I mean, there's a lot of shit TV though. Stuff. Remember, the Batwoman seasons weren't exactly short.
What are you saying? That wasn't shit. They were amazing. Every single minute.
But even in shit TV, it's like part of it now at least is because I can make better videos out of TV series than movies. But what I mean is I've watched all of The Flash and Supergirl. I've watched a lot of terrible television, but movies are far more of a commitment, like going to the cinema to actually watch them and stuff. So I felt like I lost a lot more going to the cinema to watch bad movies than bad television in the first place. And so I was going to judge them more harshly than I would bad television. But even so, I think that the big destruction of streaming series came when it got the budgets to actually attract movie people to them. And I think about Secret Invasion. Like, Secret Invasion should never have been made. I don't know why it costs so much money. I don't know how it costs so much money. But loads of people go, well, it would have made a better movie. Well, why can't you make a better?
Yeah, I know.
If you could make 90 minutes of good television, why couldn't you make longer versions of it? Except for the sole reason that the people that made it don't have an idea that could last that long.
I have a question for Platoon, because Platoon, I know you've done a lot of stuff on Ahsoka, and with the Obi-Wan show, there was actually a fan edit where a guy basically edited it down, and apparently it was significantly better. I haven't seen it. But do you think, because there's so much fluff in Ahsoka, do you think that could be edited down into a watchable movie, or is it just too shit?
As a general rule for any Disney Star Wars show, if you cut most of it, it will improve. So I can believe that that's the case.
You're not going to make the actors any better, though. You're not going to give Sabine any emotion.
I don't know with Ahsoka whether or not there is even enough in the underlying plot to have a short, concise show that would improve over what we got. It would be quicker, so that's an improvement because we wouldn't suffer for quite so long. But you're still going to be stuck with the basic plot essentials, which is map to Thrawn, going to other galaxy via whales to meet zombie troopers and witches and a giant smurf who makes mistakes and tells everyone that he's a genius. Like, if those are the essentials of the show, there's not really much you can do to fix it, I don't think.
Well, I've heard Filoni fans say, and this includes Star Wars Theory to some extent, he said that it's the setup season. It is the prologue season, so the good stuff is to come.
It's the prolapse season.
The prologue for what?
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's if we had a whole season to come of Thrawn versus Ahsoka, I'd be like, it's gonna be shit.
Thrawn is awful as a character. The only thing I know about Thrawn is from Ahsoka, but his character was awful. He basically spent the entire series losing to go, oh, I'm actually amazing. It's like, what?
We loved the nuclear grade cope that he displayed. It was genuinely impressive.
To be honest with you guys, if we get him again, which we obviously will, like I will look forward to the meme of him constantly coping. It's like funny as hell.
I did that. I did that where I took the downfall scene where Hitler's generals are announcing to him all these disasters that are happening around Berlin, and then I cut to Thrawn, and Thrawn said something like, "These are acceptable losses." And then the Russians are like 5 miles from the Reichstag, and he says, like, victory is mine. Just yeah.
But that's
what he's like. Adversary.
I come from like the era of, you've got Buffy, you've got Stargate, you've got Star Trek. There's so many series that used to go on for 22 episodes, and now these people can't even create a story over 6 episodes and make it make sense. I just think it shows that you need a lot.
If you brought that back, if you made a high budget, say 22, a market for an episode.
I don't think you need a high budget, because if you look at like Star Trek, they made like the sets of the ship and then they just reuse them. It just requires actual talented writers. But my thing has always been, it's the people making the show. They don't actually have the same morality as the audience, so they physically are incapable of writing anything that the audience cares about, because all they do is pitch evil as good, and until you actually fire them and replace them with people which have the same morality as the audience, you will never have a story that's good. Like, because I'm fed up of having stories where I like the bad guy rather than the good guy. I am always supporting the evil guy in the series as the one who is right in everything. It happened in Robin Hood. It even happened in Doctor Who. He wanted to wipe out London. Like, yeah, fair enough. Go ahead, man.
Did
you support Darth Vader?
Anything for was Wish. Oh Jesus, Darth Vader, Christ!
I didn't support anyone in that movie. She just kind of existed and wanted to destroy things.
Her motivation was just, I hate Captain Marvel, so you can kind of get behind her a little bit.
I want to save my planet, but also I hate Captain Marvel, and I will doom my planet to get at her, and then it's fuck it, I'll just explode and tear a hole in space-time. So it's not even like an approachable.
You just pointed out, like, if her main goal was initially just to save her planet, she could get all of the things that she needed from
and then go after
world.
Yep.
It's like, I can find a world with an ocean and an atmosphere and a sun, and I'll just get all the things I need there, and then I can go about doing my revenge thing against Captain Marvel.
Yep. No, yeah, but it had to be convoluted because the movie needed to happen.
It's like, why did we always have to open the portal next to the actual group of people with the superheroes next to them? Just open them up on a planet on the opposite side of the Earth.
Why didn't you take the water and the air from the same planet? Why would you?
Somebody actually left a mathematical calculation in my comment section, and I think they said something like, if Darben opened up a hole of that size, it would take 18 million years to get all the water she needs.
Those are my favorite comments.
It does make you, it does make you wonder. Like, if it's a hole just like 100 yards across, how long is it going to take to fill an entire ocean? Like, probably quite a while.
You're filling an ocean without a sun, so good luck keeping that shit liquid.
What happens to all the people underneath it? It opens up above them.
There was one more super chat I was going to do just before we finished up there, and it was a nice feel-good one from Grunso, who says, back in March, we spoke on Zoom about Star Wars for my dissertation. The time that you gave me back then helped me to pass and graduate. Thanks isn't enough. I'm beyond grateful. Next goal, to be a guest on Open Bar. Well, there you go. It was a pleasure to talk to you, man. I remember the conversation we had. I was in the middle of doing like a bunch of different things all at the same time, so I'm sorry if I was a bit distracted at the time. But yeah, I'm glad I could help a little bit. And yeah, glad to know that you passed your dissertation. So well done, man. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get you an Open Bar. Sorry, I'll bring that off there. But yeah, I know we've been going for a while now, and I think it's probably a good place to finish up for the evening. I want to say thank you to my awesome panel of guests. Very much appreciate you guys giving up a couple hours of your time to do this. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone in chat who's super chatted, who's kept the chat going throughout the evening. Appreciate you guys. And thank you to my awesome team of mods. You guys do an awesome job as always. It's very much appreciated. And I guess before we finish up, panel guests, do you have anything that you want to make us aware of that you've got coming up? Anything you want to plug? Now would be a great time, I guess.
I have a 5-hour Marvels video. That's on its way.
I'm sorry for you.
Really looking forward to that because when I was doing my video, I was like, I can't cover all this crap. So I was hoping that someone would do it. So I'm really looking forward to that. If there's any history buffs who are as disgusted as I am with Ridley Scott's Napoleon movie, I'll be doing a video explaining everything that was wrong with that movie, certainly from a historical perspective.
I'm going to be covering that on Tuesday on a not so happy hour. But we managed to get one of the stunt coordinators, I think, from the movie itself, from Napoleon. He's going to come on and talk a bit about it, and probably talk a bit about the 4-hour cut that's floating around out there that we'll eventually see. So, looking forward to covering that.
But, yeah. I like the way Little Platoon said it. It was like, after a 5-hour video, like, please, somebody, I spent so much time on this.
It sounded like a cry for help.
He sounded like mentally scarred.
I'm just sitting here knowing
like,
the pain of it. I'm just like,
that's
you'll be okay, buddy. You'll be okay.
The first video of 5 explaining everything that's wrong with the Marvels, because it would take like 25 hours to get through.
Oh yeah, I've tried to be concise, obviously.
You'd have to be very concise. If you're going to do it in only 5 hours, that's actually quite amazing.
Yeah.
There is a lot to unpack.
You can't be concise if it's longer than the movie.
Fuck off.
Well, I mean, watch the movie 3 times in the time it would take to watch the review and form my own opinion.
Why are you forcing me to listen to your opinion on the movie?
I mean, if that's the bar we're going off, I've got a Doctor Who review video of 58 minutes, which is almost exactly the same time as the actual episode itself. And
it's way more rewarding, I would imagine.
Oh, yes.
Well, hopefully, because it's not a high bar. So if I failed at least that, then I don't know what else to do with my life.
It's like I'm done with YouTube. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I released a video going over why it happened, and then I released a review of the episode. And so whichever way you prefer to consume the media, there it is for you.
Well, the links to everyone's channels are in the description, so if you're not giving them a follow already, then please subscribe to them, because they all produce amazing content, and it's been a pleasure to have all of them on the open bar this evening. But for now, that's all we got for today, so go away now.
Bye.
I'll see ya.
Bye-bye.